Welcome to episode number 6 of the BK Show podcast. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing one of my good mates, Jon Warren. He is the founder of BuildSellGrowRepeat.com, where he helps entrepreneurs grow profitable e-commerce businesses. I've known Jon for a very long time. We kind of came up together, if you will, and we chat every single Friday. It's something I enjoy. We just get to shoot the shit. We talk business, we talk life, we talk kids, we talk the difference between America and Australia on some topics, and we just have a good time. So he's somebody I get along with really, really well. I think you'll hear how we jive pretty well on this podcast. So we're going to talk about everything from his journey into e-commerce to how to start a high-ticket drop shipping store and the process you go through there. We're going to talk about each of our own businesses that we sold and kind of talk about where we're going from there too. So I think you'll enjoy this conversation. I hope you stick around and listen to the whole thing because it gets pretty good in the second half of the episode. We get pretty revealing with our old businesses. So please enjoy the episode with Jon Warren. If you love it, leave a review on iTunes as usual and share it with somebody else who you think would enjoy this podcast. That's what helps us grow. So please welcome to the show, my good mate, Jon Warren. Hey, man, welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Benny. I'm good, man. How are you?
Dude, I'm awesome. So I might have said this in the intro already, but Jon and I go way back. At least in my foray into e-commerce, I've known Jon, I think, the whole way along. But so, I'm glad to interview. I'm glad to tell your story, but I do want to start way, way back, man. Is that okay with you if we jump way back there?
We can. Of course.
Like you've been around the block. Obviously we started, doing the same sort of thing, high ticket dropshipping. At least that's when I started. That's when I met Jon Warren. But what were you doing before all that? Tell me the journey to entrepreneurship for Jon Warren.
Yeah, well, it was a really long journey, actually. I mean, I got into entrepreneurship when I was, how old am I now? Early 30s, I guess. So I must have been 31 or so, 32 even, or around there. I came to e-commerce, which was my first foray into entrepreneurship, as you say, with the high-ticket drop shipping, and we started that around the same time. But I came to that after a decade-long career in a completely different field. I was in what we call in Australia industrial relations management, and I'd been doing that, as I say, for 10 years, which was sort of my first real, serious kind of career thing. Before that, I guess I was kind of in a lot of ways really lost about what I wanted to do in life. I had a whole bunch of different jobs, did all sorts of different things, from construction to working in bars, working at selling cars, all sorts of stuff. And I think at the back of my mind, like even going back to when I was in high school, nothing that going back that far ever really fit well for me. The whole, I always had a problem with authority and being told what to do by other people and, all that sort of thing. And I think in the back of my mind, when I think back on it now, I think when I was in high school, I always thought I'd want to work for myself, right? Because I was never that kid in high school who was like, oh, I want to be this, man. I want to be a vet, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a whatever. I never had that.
Dude, I don't know how anybody did that. I was lost at 18 years old. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah, well, I was lost, man. I was wild as hell. I was all over. So I used to party like nothing else, do all sorts of crazy, crazy stuff. But I just had no direction. But I always had this thought, even back then, and I can remember this, thinking, well, I should probably work for myself because I don't do well working for other people. It doesn't sit right for me. But I just for whatever reason, I just wasn't in the headspace to work out, well, what does that actually mean? How does that work? Where do you start with that? And because I think that, for me, I didn't know any business people when I was growing up. None of my sort of, people I might have looked up to were in business. My parents weren't. Nobody in my family was. So I just don't think I knew, how do you actually start a business?
But it seems like there's a lot of cues, at least here in America, right? Like the lemonade stand or paper route's a good one, right? There's a lot of cues of little entrepreneurial things you did as a kid, or you went and mowed lawns, right? Or flipped baseball cards or whatever it was, right? I did a ton of those things, or sold weed, whatever it is, right? Was there anything like that back for you when you were a kid that were these little signs?
Yeah, it was. But I think, I will say, I mean, look, I've been working with you lovely Americans for years now, And I do think that the approach to entrepreneurship between people in the US and people in Australia is a little different. You know, like in the US, you know, like people who are out there doing that stuff, you know, making their own way, all that sort of stuff, are kind of held up in society. Whereas here in Australia, it's I wouldn't say it's looked down on, but we have this thing we call a tall poppy syndrome, which is like if somebody gets out there like an entrepreneur who's doing really well and they're doing something different, people tend to try and cut them down and find problems with what they're doing and all that sort of thing.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard like crabs in the pot, same sort of thing.
Yeah,
right?
it's really like a really subtle kind of societal, psychological difference that I don't think encourages entrepreneurship in the same way that the sense I get from the US is. But anyway,
I think it's changed, right? Nowadays, it's like you're a celebrity, right? Entrepreneur is kind of like the new athlete, being an athlete, right? I don't know. It's changed a lot. Certainly, when I was a kid, I don't know if it was encouraged. My dad was like, he would just yell at me, right? Like I'm always asking him for money or a new pair of shoes, and we grew up poor. And he was like, go get a job, right? So like when I was 13 or 14, I think even younger, I think it was 12, I had a paper route, right? I was just on my bike at 3:30 every day, chucking papers after school, you know?
Yeah. And like I had a paper route when I was in high school for a while as well, but that was just working for somebody else, right? It wasn't something you could do sort of as your own business. Man, I sold weed as well and did all that sort of stuff, but that never really sparked the this is actually a business type activity. It was just kind of like, oh well, whatever sort of thing. I'm making some money, but for whatever reason that it just never clicked for me. And then after growing up a lot and at that time around my early 30s, it just all of a sudden kind of clicked into place, like mentally. And I don't really know why that is. Like it's hard to put my finger on it. But I think as well, for you and me, well, particularly me, I'm a bit older than you. Like when I was in my teenage years, that's really kind of pre-internet, right? So you didn't have, I'm 38. Right.
Okay. I mean, you're only a couple of years older than me, right? But like in high school, I was taking typing classes. We were building like basic HTML websites. Like,
so I shouldn't say pre-internet. I mean, the internet was there, right? But it wasn't like, there weren't like these, as a teenager, these online communities that you'd go out and join. There's no social media. And so fast forward to when I'm like early 30s, of course, you've got social media now. You've got all of these people who are out there, these entrepreneurs who are building these amazing businesses, and you can discover them really easy at that point, right? And I think I started to see that, and some of the things that other people were doing and, talking about how they were making all this money doing this thing or that thing, and this is how you do it. And some of those things just started to click for me, and it was actually seeing that. And I think that's, what a lot of people will say, people who get into entrepreneurship from a really young age, they see somebody else in their life doing it.
Yeah.
Right. It's that thing. You got to know it's possible, in a sense, to have the belief that you can do it. Right. And I think for me, when I was younger, I just never saw anyone doing it.
Well, what got you into industrial relations? That's what you said it was called, right? I don't even know what that is.
Well, it's hard to explain. It's kind of an Australian. I guess it's an Australian term or like a Commonwealth term. I guess they use the same term in the UK. I guess it's kind of comparable to sort of HR.
Okay.
In a sense. It's a little bit different, but like...
You took in a lot of complaints.
Yeah, helping people out with problems in their workplace, trying to be, I guess, a go-between senior management and employees, dealing with wages, all this sort of stuff. So, something that... How did I get into that? Well, once again, it was just one of those things that... I just kind of fell into. I didn't do it initially for any sort of, deep interest or love of it or anything like that. There was a time I just needed a job, and that's what I landed.
But you didn't go to university or anything for HR?
No. I actually went to university and studied animal science.
Nice. So you wanted to be something, right? Like you wanted to be a zookeeper?
You know why I went to uni? I went to uni because going back to high school, I got kicked out of high school. So I didn't finish high school, right? I got kicked out of high school in year 12 because I was just a bit too wild and crazy. and I had no real reason for being there. Like high school for me, I didn't have any particular thing I wanted to be, and the whole argument of that my parents had been making at me my whole life. Oh, you need to go to school. You need to get good marks so you can go to university and get a degree, and so you can go into the classic story, right? I was just like, why? Like, why the fuck do I need to do that? I don't believe that's true. So school for me just really held no point, particularly later in senior high school. Like, why have I got to sit in a maths class and learn about bloody algebra? To me, that just seemed ridiculous. So anyway, I got kicked out of high school. And
so how do you get to go to uni if you got kicked out of high school?
Well, in Australia, you can enter uni as what's called a mature age student. So if you're over the age of 21, you can go. They have a number of places for each degree that's sort of set aside for people in that age bracket. So people can still go to uni. Like, you have to do tests and stuff and prove that your brain actually works to the level they require.
So 18 to 21, you're just doing whatever you feel like doing, odd jobs and partying.
Yeah. Odd jobs, partying. I was doing jobs that paid all right money. I did a lot of laboring jobs, hard physical work and, but still decent money and that sort of thing. But there was literally no direction in any sense whatsoever. Like, it was just like, I was just sort of going from one weekend to the next.
Yeah, I remember that very, very well, actually.
Yeah. What fun's coming up this weekend?
Right. How can I make more beer money?
Yeah, totally. But got into uni because a lot of my friends had been at uni and doing uni, and I was kind of like, well, they seem to be having fun. I'll go and see what all the fuss is about. Because I had nothing better to do. So I'm just like, I love animals. All right. I like science. I find these things interesting. I'm going to go and do a degree in animal science. So I did.
Did you have a goal on the end of that? Like, I mean, where do you go with that? Is there like, so in the States it's like DNR, right? The Department of Natural Resources. Like, is there something like that in Australia where you can go take care of wallabies and dogs?
Yeah. It's actually a pretty broad course. So it's similar to vet science, but it's not the full vet science deal. But you can take it in a number of directions. Like, you could take it as into farming and livestock. So like how to raise the best cows. Wildlife management, so working with endangered species, breeding race horses, which actually probably would have been a far more lucrative thing for me to do because, guys that do that well earn a crap load of money. But, there's all sorts of things you can go. You can work for the government as well, sure. But as I say, when I started, I didn't even start that degree going, I want to be at this.
Sure. How do you walk out of How to Raise the Best Cow 101 and take an HR job? This is where I'm confused here.
Yeah, well, because I guess...
Like, did you graduate?
Yeah. And once again, though, I really didn't like university either. Because all it was putting me back in that sort of scenario where I'm just sitting in a room listening to somebody blather on about something.
Sure.
And you try... Yeah, you're getting a degree because you memorized the book. Like, what's that? What's with that? So I did it. I never loved it once again. Like, I found parts of it interesting, that degree, but, after being a uni student for a few years, you don't have much money.
Right.
So I needed money. I found this job I could apply for. It paid a pretty decent wage.
But it seems like in America, I can picture some friends, some people I know that are in HR, right? And they went to school for this, right? How do you walk into a position where essentially you're the therapist of the job? You know what I mean? Like, you're handling a lot of paperwork and you're handling a lot of complaints from employees.
It's similar to HR, but it's not quite the same as what you're thinking in the US. So it wasn't so much working directly with employees. It was more just about fixing problems. And look, I mean, it's probably the case that I talked myself into that job. I'm very good in job interviews, right? And I'm very comfortable with selling myself and all of that sort of thing. And, I think I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm not amazingly smart, but I'm not stupid either. I think I just probably interviewed well. I mean, I'd been in some sort of team management roles in the past in various workplaces I'd been in. And
I would assume that decade of experience had to help you at least a little bit in entrepreneurship. Like, what did you do for 10 years? What are some, was it problem solving? What were you doing?
Yeah, so probably a few things, and there definitely were things that helped. So I used to do a lot of negotiation, right? So by the end of that decade, I was doing wage negotiations worth over years, billions of dollars, right? That would have, so they were a very big deal.
What did that look like? Did the senior management give you a range and say, we're willing to go here and here, and it was your task to go to the employee and try to, get them to take the lower end of that?
Oh yeah, essentially being in the middle of that, and in the end of it, I was actually doing it with the federal government as well, and their representatives. And so it was fairly high level and large implications, both from a financial sense, but also for, talking about like negotiations that affected the wages of thousands of employees. But it was literally that, yeah. Like the employees would have something they wanted, of course, whether it's pay rise, other, entitlements or conditions, and management would have their position, which is usually the complete opposite. And you got to get in the middle and find a way through that.
Well, was your job to work for management, like to drive the wages down, or trying to win on the management side or win on the employee side, or neither?
No, it was more on the employee side for me. But I always like anything. I always looked at that as, and this is absolutely the way it should be in business when you're negotiating. You've got to find a win-win, right? People who approach negotiation as win-lose are not very good at it in the long run. And so learning negotiation and I was pretty good at that, I think. Certainly something that has worked well for me in business, and particularly dealing with customers, suppliers, et cetera, in e-commerce, because at the heart of negotiation, you have to be able to see the other person's point of view. Empathy. Right? You have to be able to communicate. Yeah, you have to be able to empathize. You have to be able to communicate with somebody on their level. You have to be able to listen to people, right? And so if you want to get really good at marketing, at being able to communicate with your customer, you got to be able to do that stuff, right? If you want to really persuade somebody to take an action, online, offline, whatever it is, you got to be able to hear them. You got to understand where they are right now and what it's going to take to get them to where you want to be. And so that negotiation experience in what was a lot of the time pretty tense situations, like somebody was always pissed off at you for what you were talking about, whether it was management or employees or whatever. There was already somebody who wasn't happy.
But isn't that the sign of a good deal? Somebody taught me that a long time ago. If you walk out of a negotiation with a good deal, both sides are cringing just a little bit, right? Like everybody's winning, but everybody's like, they're also going a little bit further than they wanted to go on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like I say, if you come out of a negotiation with a win-win, there is going to be something inherent in either side of the deal that maybe they're not 100% comfortable with, because it's if you walked out with everything you wanted, that means the other person's walking out with nothing they wanted, usually, or very little. And that makes things harder down the track in any relationship. And any relation, anytime you're in a negotiation, if you push for a negotiation where you get everything you want, you might walk away from that going, yeah, man, I'm really fucking awesome, blah, blah. The other person's walking away from that feeling terrible. They ain't going to help you in the future.
Right.
You're not getting anything else out of them. So you might have that temporary win, but your long-term relationship is going to be screwed. And at some point down the track, you're going to want to come back to that person and say, oh, can you help us out with this thing? And they're going to go, oh, yeah, remember that time you screwed me?
Right.
Sorry, buddy. I ain't helping you now. So, that was great. And I think, that obviously then gave me, I think, skills, not in the traditional sense, but like being able to sell stuff, right? So you're working on a deal. You've got to go and take that back to the stakeholders, and you've got to sell it to them if you think it's a good deal. Right. And so, I think being able to sell is one of the, basic business skills, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It sounds like you learned a few of the core business skills.
I think so. Yeah. That didn't happen out of the intention of going into business. It just kind of happened. And then when I got into business and I started, I thought, hey, actually, some of the stuff I did in that decade is actually, really useful for me. Like I can see how there's the things I learnt there cross over to this. And once I started thinking that, I certainly started putting some of those skills to work in what I was doing in business.
So it seems like a weird transition though, right? So you're doing this for 10 years. I would assume you get, a bit bored, right? You get a bit of like, what the heck am I doing? How do you make a transition into entrepreneurship? Like how you decide I'm going to go from negotiating, essentially wages in industry, right? To I'm going to start an e-commerce store.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the part of my journey that's probably very similar to a lot of other people in that I'm working doing this thing, this job, and there's a lot of travel involved, like doing a lot of interstate travel all the time, a lot of commuting backwards and forwards to different offices from where I was living, and like having no time, working 60-hour weeks, the typical story, right? And like, leaving home at 6:30 in the morning, coming back at 6:30 at night, having basically no life. By that time, I was starting a family as well. And I was just like, man, this is screwed. I'm never going to see my kids, never going to see my wife. Like, what is the point of that? Like, yeah, sure, I'm getting paid a 6-figure salary and that's great, right? Like own real estate, getting into owning real estate at that point and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but I have like no life, right? Like I'm not having any fun here. And to me, that's really like kind of fundamental for me. If I'm not having fun, I'm out. That's the end of the road for me. Like I can feel it. That's mentally, I'm just like, oh man, no. And my performance starts to drop off, and I already know I'm walking out the door at that point. So I was kind of like, man, there's got to be something better in life than this. I mean, this can't be the way. And I knew that just going and getting a different job, which is what most people would do when they get happy at one job, they're just like, oh, I'm just going to replace this with another job. I'll be doing something different, but I'm still going to be stuck in that structure. And it's not really the job that was killing me. Like I worked with some fantastic people. I got some friends from there that I still have today, all of that sort of thing. It was that structure and that lack of control and lack of ability to influence what you could do with your life that was really the problem.
Like a lot of people talk about the freedom, right? Like when you work for yourself, you don't have to be somewhere at 6 a.m., right? And you don't get home at 6 p.m. Like you were just talking about all the negatives, right? And a lot of times when I discuss with people who aren't entrepreneurs, they're like, yeah, but don't you miss that Friday night at 5 p.m. you can just shut it off and you don't have to think about anything whatsoever? And for me, I know my answer, but I'm curious your answer. Like for me, it's I can't shut it off, and I can't imagine why anybody would want to. And I'm genuinely curious, like how you feel about that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I guess this is the double-edged sword of I mean, a lot of people out there sell business as the ultimate freedom, like free up your life, get your freedom, blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of that is a bit hypey, to be honest. I mean, it's true. It can be true for sure, but there is a downside to that for a lot of people in that you want that freedom, you got to take a lot on board as well.
Yeah. A lot more responsibility.
Risk, responsibility, massive ups and downs that you don't get usually with a job. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like often late in the evening, my brain's still on. I'm still thinking about all this stuff I got planned, things that are going on, ways that I could grow a business or problems a business is having. And I don't really have a problem with turning it off either because I love it.
Yeah.
Right. For me, that's fun. Right. And this is something I've discovered and why, I'm still doing, the online business stuff after 6 years. I mean, not everything's gone well. Some things have gone great. Some things have gone bad. But I'm fundamentally what I said before, I'm having a lot of fun.
And you're in control, right?
And I'm in complete control. So if I screw up, sure. But I got to own that. That's mine. That's mine. If things go really well, that's all me. I mean, team members and all of that aside, they absolutely contribute. But, that's my thing. I built that. I did that. And yeah, I can't blame anyone when things go wrong, like you often can in a job. But, for me, that's kind of liberating. I don't want to blame anyone. I'm happy. I just feel naturally comfortable with having that responsibility that I'm in, that whatever happens, good or bad, is really on me. I feel good about that.
I'm glad you feel it the same way. I hear a lot of people who are like, Friday or it's hump day or man, I can't believe tomorrow's Monday. And it was, what? Like, I don't know. Every day is the same to me, and I love every second of it, but I might be a little crazy too. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely not for everyone, man. It's really not. It's so not. A lot of people just can't deal with that. Like for me, there's no hump day, there's no Friday, there's no weekend, there's no public holidays. I don't give a fuck what day of the week it is, man. Like if I want to get something done, I'm just gonna go and done.
We're literally recording this on a major U.S. holiday right now, right?
Friday night, like whatever. I'm excited to do it. And, the minute that I'm not, I'll know it's time to do something else as well, though. Because, I see this a lot with other business owners I talk to. When they lose the love of it and they lose that excitement, that challenge, like that's when they're in trouble in their business, right? That's when things start to drop off.
I feel like I've heard you say this, like our mutual friend Isaac, right? He came to you and you told him, he'll sell your business. What are you doing? Like, it's not going to go anywhere from here.
Yeah, I'm sure Isaac wouldn't mind me talking about it. I mean, we got on a coaching call to talk about his e-commerce business just from a marketing perspective, to give him some help with things like Google Ads and some strategy and that sort of thing, right? Completely not to talk about, whether he should keep running it, but I could just, in talking through various aspects of it, I could just hear in his voice that it was kind of just like he was dragging his feet for it, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like there was no passion there. There was no excitement. He just sounded really tired talking about it. And at this point, he'd been running it, I think, for maybe 5 years or something, maybe even more. And I just said, dude, man, like, is this what you want to be doing? Like, are you into this business? And he was like, not really. And I was just like, man, just sell it. It's worth something, right? You can sell it. And I think he stewed on that for a while, because it took him about 6 months or more before he sold it. But that's what he ended up doing. And yeah, he got a great price for it, I think. And went out and started a completely different business that he's really pumped about, right? Helping e-commerce entrepreneurs with their finances, and they're balancing their books and all that sort of stuff. And he's super into that and still is. And, and I think that's a really good example of, because when you don't love it, it's really hard to be that person at the top that pushes things on, that takes responsibility for everything. Right. And the minute you start doing that, all sorts of things start to slip. And, if you're at the top of a really good business at that point, then, you might waste a great opportunity.
I think we meandered all over the place, but that was good, man. Like, take me back, right? So you're working in HR, right? And you must be getting fed up at this point, right? You're talking about working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., starting to have kids.
Yeah.
What makes the switch? Or like, how does that change happen? Because for me, I remember the day where I just sit down and I took a note on my phone and I was like, this is it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore, right? Was there a moment for you?
No, I think I was a little bit different, and you've told that story. That's a really cool story. I hope you tell it sometime on this podcast.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'll have to read the note. It's still on my phone for sure.
For me, I think it was more of a slow build up. And I mean, I can't pin it to an exact like day or time where I just finally said like, right, I just got to do this. But I definitely remember it sort of just building up this thought in the back of my mind that my experience at that point in life, it just wasn't right. It wasn't right for me. It wasn't what I wanted. I just couldn't understand why I was in that sort of stuck within that structure. And I just started looking, so what's the alternative? And I came back to that thought of, well, I think I need to work for myself. But it was the same as when I was younger, thinking about what I want to do with my life. Like, I didn't say, well, I was just saying, I think I should work for myself. That was kind of like the idea, but I didn't have any sort of sense, and I need to do this working for myself. Like, this is the thing I'm really passionate about. So I think I went through a process for some time of kind of looking around, like, well, okay, I want to work. How am I going to make that work? How does that work? Like, at that point, I still had no real sense of, like, how do you start a business? Like, where do you start? How much money do you need? All this sort of stuff. So I went went through a process over some time. And like I say, the advantage now at that point in time is the internet's a flourishing place, and you don't have to look far to find out, like, how do you start a business? What are some fantastic ideas? At that point, I'd come across other people in my life who, were running online businesses, and I was starting to get exposed to some of the things that people did in that space.
You had friends doing this?
Not necessarily really close friends. Like, at that point, I had one really good friend who was in like web development and like app development and that sort of stuff, and he was doing really well. But all of my other best mates were, still working jobs. So it was just more people I'd come across in life who I'd been friends with on social media. I call them loosely friends, I suppose, but not like, close friends or anything.
But you were consuming, right? Like, you were seeing it, you were consuming it. I mean, you hear that phrase, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with most. And I don't think it's actually people, right? You just said your best mates still had jobs, and they were still doing the normal thing. I think it's what you're consuming, right? What are you absorbing? For me, it was, I started investing a ton in just podcasts and just started consuming content of people who were doing things I wanted to be doing. And slowly but surely that started opening my eyes to what was possible, right? And so you're saying the same sort of thing. You started seeing people doing things outside of the box that's really started opening your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, yeah. And I mean, if you get real for a second, there's a lot of sayings that get punted around in the business space that just get said because they sound good, and it makes some guys sound like you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around with the most. Like, yeah, I get that. Who's in your network is important, but the 5 people you hang around with most, no, dude. Like, what? Should I stop hanging around with my wife because she's not a business owner? Like, that's fucking stupid.
Right.
It's an exaggeration of the truth. And like, people on the internet love to like come up with these really simple sayings that exaggerate the truth. Yep, it's great to have a good network in business, but does that mean you should stop hanging out with your best mate who you have a brother-like relationship with because he's not in business and he's not a billionaire? No. You'd be doing your life a disservice if you did that. You'd be a sadder person. Like, what's the point? That's stupid.
I think since I've known you, you've called bullshit on like a million things that I've ever talked about. And so for the rest of this podcast, if there's a cheesy business line, I'm going to start saying it just to get John to go off, because that's probably my favorite part of hanging out with you. So I'm going to see what I can pull out of that.
Yeah, I'm a fairly blunt person, but I think you're right on the consumption thing, right? Like, if you don't have a network of people, like if you, like me, you grew up and you don't know anybody else who's in, like, how, you've got to go out and find that. And being in Australia, it's getting easier and it's getting better. But being in Australia, particularly in the online space, there's not a huge community of people who are really successful in that space. Most of those people are in the US, right? So I can't hop on a plane all the time to fly over to the US to hang out with really cool people who do the same thing as me. So I've got to find ways to connect with a lot of those people and at least consume their content, right? And that's kind of the same. It's not exactly the same thing, obviously, but it's fairly close, and it's a great place to start. And yeah, I think you can, you can change the course of your life a lot by making the conscious decision to consume the right stuff, right? Because particularly now, you can consume all sorts of anything. Most of it's trash, man, and it's not going to help you anywhere in life. Get on your Facebook feed, man. It's like a fucking war zone, right?
Yeah. Well, even if you're out there searching for like business stuff, it's hard to decipher what's worth listening to and what's not. There's just so much out there.
There is. And like, once again, a lot of it is trash. A lot of it's not real. It's if you want to get in the biz ops space, business opportunities, like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? All you got to do is put up something that says, "Oh, just do this and you'll make money," and someone's going to buy it. Even if you don't teach them anything, people are still going to buy it, and it's such a double-edged sword. It's great that we can get such ready access to people who can make things happen, but at the same time, you've got a probably greater number of people that can't really make anything happen that are selling.
The beauty of the internet is those people don't last long either, right? Like, you can only fool some people for so long.
No, true. Absolutely. Yeah. It's and it is, getting easier and easier to sort of dig into people and actually find out if they're real or not, and if they do have something valuable for you to consume. But there's still a lot of people. I mean, you and I say that from the space of having been in online business for 6 years, right? I mean, if you're just some, poor sod out in the country who's just jumping online for the first time, you can't do that, right? You don't know how to do that. So you're going to get taken advantage of.
You're right. I mean, I could set up a site tomorrow to teach somebody a business model. I could go buy 3 other domains and write business model reviews and write my own reviews, right? So you think somebody else is corroborating the fact that this course is legit, and it doesn't take much. Yeah, the internet's it's so great in some ways, and it's so not. And I don't know, man. I've learned a lot of hacks along the way, like a lot of crazy hacks. And I still amaze people when I tell some people how some of them work, right? And they're kind of shocked. Like Amazon reviews was one of them a few years back. Everybody thought that was legit, right? They were like, no way, you write your own reviews? I'm like, yeah, back then you could, right? And so people were shocked that that wasn't legit people reviewing it. And I would imagine people still today use those as like their baseline on whether they should order something or not, right? Not knowing that they're completely manipulated.
Yeah. Oh, and like I still see it. People I coach, I was coaching this guy the other day, and new website, e-commerce website, he's reselling products, and he's got products on there that have like 39 reviews on them, and it's like, dude's only made like 3 sales.
Dude, my first store had that. I'm not gonna lie. I went and sourced them all over the internet for every product I had.
I didn't do that. I never did that. never have done it. Never have done it.
So how did you find, like, you're out there consuming, and how did you find a course you could trust, right? Like, obviously, I'm sure you took a course to learn this stuff, or you probably did some free learning on the YouTube as well.
No, well, look, to get started with high ticket drop shipping, as I did, there was a guy that I'd met at some point, probably 12 to 18 months earlier, probably 12 months earlier, and he was just posting a lot online about this high ticket drop shipping he was doing and putting up screenshots. And this was at a time before all the AliExpress dropshipping gurus were out there posting screenshots all over about their Shopify accounts all over the internet. And, those guys really screwed up that space, to be honest, for everyone else. But
that's what most people think of when I tell them that I drop shipped. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not to mention that dropshipping had been around for years and years before those, direct from China.
And it'll be around after, right? Like long after.
Well, it still is. That model's pretty much dead, right? Like, some guys have spun it off into slightly different things, but it's gone. Like I worked with some of these guys and they disappeared mighty fast, But anyway, so this guy I knew, he's just posting stuff about, he's doing this business and he was doing it from all sorts of places, and, he's doing well with it. And, so I started looking into it, and it seemed really simple. Well, fairly simple, and it is really simple from one perspective. And he was talking about this course that you could do it, which was same course you did, Dropship Lifestyle. We both did that, and I was like, well, I guess I was just like, I was so sick of my job. I was just like, well, I don't have anything to lose here, right? So, I bought the course, jumped in, and got to work.
So you base it solely on one person's recommendations? I think it's the same person I was consuming podcasts in. Like, I bought into the whole dream of live in Southeast Asia and sit on a beach with your laptop on making $1,000 a month. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I bought into
I don't think I really bought into the whole, digital nomad stuff and all that sort of thing. But I mean, the ability to just, to be able to do it from a place of your choosing was an attraction, obviously, but I didn't necessarily want to do it in that particular way. But look, I mean, that one person's experience got me into it. And I mean, I did a bit more looking around, a bit more research at the time into that particular program that we took and that sort of stuff. And I mean, it was cheap as at that point though. So that, once again, there wasn't really any risk involved.
Yeah, I researched it a lot. Like, I listened to a lot of podcasts with the founder of it, but I was convinced, man, just to take it a step back, I was convinced, dude. I was moving to Thailand. Like I was sold. Like that was going to be the dream, man. I'm 30. Screw this American stuff. Screw this working, driving a forklift. I'm going to make it. I'm going to go live on a beach and this is going to be my new life, right? I was sold. I was sold on the dream. Not even on the model, the business model or any of that stuff. Like I still wasn't sure if that worked, but I knew I was going to be sitting on a beach someday. And I don't know. That's what got me in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough. Never happened though, did it?
I've been over there a few times, right? I love it there, but I don't live there.
And I don't say that to suggest that you couldn't, because you're definitely successful enough to be able to do that, but you didn't end up doing that.
I wasn't all cracked up to be. I don't think a MacBook would survive very well on a beach.
It's not all it cracks up to be. I mean, I've spent a lot of time overseas, and yeah, sure. Once again, it's for some people. It's not for everyone, right? I mean, Thailand particularly, I've spent a lot of time there. It's a great place, but you live there permanently. There's some downsides going on there, right? It's not all, rainbows and lollipops.
Look, I think if I wasn't like, I don't know, I was 30 when I got started or 31, something like that. I think if I was 21, maybe. Like, number one, I don't know if I could have made it work because I was a moron back then. But let's say I made it work and I was still a moron, right, who just wanted to drink all the time. I probably would have ended up in Thailand. I probably would have ended up in Thai jail, if I'm honest with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, after going into e-commerce and doing all that and doing what I do, I mean, I've never ended up doing that either. I mean, sure, I've traveled around a bit and stuff and been able to run my businesses from wherever I'm at, but I've never sort of gone off. And I mean, I have 4 kids, man,
What sold you then? Like just the opportunity to make money in a different setting, like or control your own destiny?
Yeah, that's it. Well, it was just going back to the opportunity of being in control, being in control of everything.
So
right?
Were you chasing pleasure, or were you running away from the pain of your job? Because I was clearly personally running away hard from what I was doing.
Oh yeah, no, I was running away from the pain of the job. Not like I say, not specifically that job. I was running away from the pain of that set kind of pre-planned feeling life, like this is it for the next 40 years of your life, 60 hours a week, 6 to 6, like, oh my God, shoot me now. That's how I felt about it. Like I could not face doing that repetitively for that long. You retire at, God, now in Australia, I think they've pushed the retirement age up to 70. You retire at 70, get your get your money that your employer's been putting aside for you for 40 or 50 years. No, thank you.
So I actually want to dive into what you did, because like I'm pretty sure, me personally, I'm past my non-disclosure, non-compete window. Are you? Spoiler alert: we both sold our first businesses. Like, are you past all that? Because I would love to like actually deep dive into this whole model and like what that looked like for your business and what that looked like for mine. And
I'm pretty sure I am. Yeah, I mean, I sold my first business right on 3 years ago. Actually, pretty much this month. Early this month, it would have been 3 years ago. Yeah.
So let's walk through it then, man. I want people to understand, because we both talk about how this is pretty easy, right? Like the real effort's between your ears and just doing the work. So like, what did that look like? Let's talk through your journey of like, you started taking the course, then what?
Yeah, I started taking the course and I got into it, like I got it, like I put some time into it, like pretty quick time. And I was working away. So, take the course, you got to build your business, build a website, find products to put on your website, all that sort of stuff. I really got into that. I worked at it like every night after work till like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning for like a month. I was even getting up early before work, putting in an hour or so on it. And I did that for about a month and, got it all set up, ready to go, and opened it up. And, it was, for that business, that first business, for me, my experience was it was a real patchy, slow start, right? And, definitely not the start that most people envision when they see how these sort of online businesses are marketed.
No doubt, yeah.
and that's the secret, if you want to get into this stuff, this high ticket dropshipping. And look, I mean, I've worked with over 300 high ticket dropshipping business owners now in the last 4 years through coaching, doing services for them, all sorts of stuff. And the majority of them, it's not the start that gets marketed, right? It's patchy, it's inconsistent. There's times where you're losing money on ads, and that was my experience. That's what happens for the majority of people that do it, honestly. There is a handful of people, and you've been involved with some of those that have a much faster start, right?
Yeah.
And do build a fairly large business very quickly in terms of the traditional business sense. And but I guess the thing about online business is it kind of gets pushed to something that's different to the usual business experience. Like, you start a physical business, right, where you've got a lot of capital input and stuff. You're not expecting to be profitable for like a year or two, right? That's like normal business experience. And I'm not saying that that's great or that's right or whatever, but I think sometimes in the online space you get this disconnection between the reality of starting a business and the dream, right? Because it's easy to sell the dream.
100%. You're going to the moon in your Lamborghini, like, instantly, right?
That doesn't happen. So, and that's not what happened to me. So for me, I think in my first month marketing, and I think I made like 2 sales.
So is this the business you sold?
Yeah.
So right away, I want to take a few steps back, and I don't want to dive deep into anything, but let's hit the highlights of how easy this is to start, at least in my opinion, right? You got to build a business so that it looks like you have an operating business, right? You have to build a website. Probably before that, you might want to go find a niche. So we sold high ticket stuff, $200 and above, right? I personally prefer multiple $1,000 things. It's just way more fun. And it's just as easy to sell a $5,000 item as it is a $500 item, with way more profit, right? And so how did you, so you sold ceiling fans, right? And was there anything else on that store?
No, I sold lighting, like chandeliers, pendant lights, wall lights, just a range of home lighting products.
So how did you determine that? Just what were 3 criteria you looked through and you were like, I'm going to sell lighting?
Well, at the time, and I got to say, the first time I did it, I would not do it that way again. This is not products or a niche that I would do. If I was starting one of these businesses today, and I'm actually starting some new ones right now, it ain't going to be this. This would not be one I would recommend or pick. But at the time, I would have looked at the price. Being able to find supplies, like local supplies, and this was an Australian business, of course, because I'm in Australia, and that was the easiest way to start. So I would have wanted to see enough suppliers to go and get a decent amount of products off. And I think one of my main considerations then was how easy would it be to ship the products as well. Most of those products are fairly compact. They're light because obviously they've got to hang off a roof. They're not heavy generally, except for the really big ones. And so I think that's really all I was primarily looking at back then. If I do it now, there's a whole range of criteria that's much more in depth than that. But
yeah, expensive and small, and that was it.
Yeah, I was naive back then, right?
Sure. Look, as was I. I'm happy to share my side of this every question I ask you, right? For me, I knew that my wife's uncle was selling grills, and I was like, oh, that's it, right? I'm going to sell grills. I think I started brickfirebarbecue.com is what I bought first. And then I was way too scared to call the suppliers in the first place.
Yeah.
And so someone in one of the forums from that course we took was like, I'm really sick. I'm in the hospital. Does anyone want to buy my business? I have 4 suppliers. And I was like, that's it. I don't have to call them. Yes. So I bought the dude's business for $400
right.
And it was 3D printers. And I was like, well, I don't know shit about 3D printers, but here we go. Right. Sounds like a good niche to me. And they were pretty expensive. So that's how I stumbled into it. I didn't know what I was doing either.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And, I think, looking back on it and that experience, I think that's kind of part of the beauty of it. You've got to go through that naivety. I don't think you can skip that in business. It sucks because it's what kills a lot of business people, right? And it helps to get started with pre-armed with some knowledge and stuff. But for me, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I hadn't gone through that. I don't think you can cut that journey. You can put in some shortcuts in there that I think it's healthy to do, but I think you've got to go through that experience. I think it makes you a better a better business person. And, if you get to the point where you're in a position to help other entrepreneurs, like you can't help other people unless you've lived their experience either.
Look, and it humbles you too, right? Like the kid who's running through the mud and falls flat on his face, he's not cocky anymore, right? He's not. If he was leading the pack and then he fell, he's going to be like, all right, I'm humble, right? So same sort of thing. It humbles you to realize you're not invincible, but there is shortcuts, right? You talked about some of the business owners you'd worked with who you've seen exponential growth right out of the gates, and I know a few too. They all got a coach, right? They all got a consultant. They all brought somebody in to like bounce questions off of, and man, I would recommend that for anybody at any level, right? Like I have a coach still. I have multiple coaches, right? I would definitely recommend that. So I kind of wish there was something like that back then. I don't remember there was anybody that you could reach out to and say, hey man, can I pay you, a small amount and just ask you questions? Because I think that would help me a lot in deciding what I should have been doing. Yeah,
same here. Like when I started, once again, I had that program that I was following along with, right? Which was made by, you could say that person was a mentor for me, the person who made that program, not in a direct sense because I wasn't talking to them, but
sure.
I had their knowledge, their process, etc. So in a sense, it's kind of like an online mentor, if you like. But at that point, I was like the only person following that process in Australia who was actually getting anywhere with it. There was nobody else here because it was a bit different here too in the US. There was nobody else to talk to. And once again, I didn't know anybody else in online business. So yeah, I had no sort of coach, mentor. I didn't even know to go and look for one of these people at that point either, like I didn't know about that stuff. This was my first time in the business world.
And for me, I was broke, right? I'd spent the G on the course on a credit card that I didn't have, right? Like I was like 40K in debt at that point. So even if there was a magic coach that came along and was like, for $100, I'll coach you. I didn't have a fucking $100, man. Like,
yeah. And it's never for $100 either.
No.
You want one-on-one mentoring? It's like $2,000 for an hour.
Yeah. I don't know where one was other than like there was a forum attached to it. And I think that's how you and I got introduced to each other, right? We were just active in that forum, asking questions and trying to help people and trying to, get help ourselves. And so look, like obviously you built this site, right? You decided on pendants and lighting. I swear it was ceiling fans. Did you sell ceiling fans too?
I think I would have sold some on that site at one point because like a lot of suppliers sell both.
Sure.
But that was not where I started, no.
I have this like visual in my head of your website with a...
Yeah, I think I probably sold them a couple of summers because in Australia, they only really sell in summer. So the suppliers all get massive stocks of them in for summer, right? And then in winter, they don't have any because nobody's buying them in winter really. So I probably ran some promotions at various points, yeah, with ceiling fans.
So you pick them out, right? You have to build a website in order to call those suppliers and make it seem like you're a real business. Or for me, I was honest with them. I was just like, look, I'm starting. This is where I'm going. This is what my website's going to look like. Convince the suppliers to let them allow you to be a vendor for them, right? And then you get your margins and all that other good stuff. You upload the products, and then what, right? So in America, it's time to flip on Google Ads. Is there something different in Australia, or was it simply just start running Google Ads?
Well, I just had the US version of this, so yeah, it was just flip on Google Ads, Google Shopping,
and pray.
And kind of hope for the best.
Yeah. No, that's how it went for me too, man. I remember flipping it on and like a week went by and nothing, and another week went by. And I do remember my first sale though, right? Like that might have been one of my most defining moments in my entire life. It's something I won't forget. And tell me, let's hear your story, man. What happened for your first sale and like, how did that change?
Yeah. Well, I was still working, my job obviously, because I'd built all of this while I was still working a job. And, as I say, I was making good money. So I wasn't about to quit that job until I had worked out that I could replace it, at least in part, with this business stuff. And I was working. I was in the city in Sydney, in Australia, down in the CBD. And I'd just come out of one of the negotiation meetings that I was doing. I think probably on a lunch break, I reckon. I went to check my email and I had the Shopify notification in my email, order number, blah, 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 and that was it. That was the first one. So just on the lunch break. And so I got on the phone with the supplier and I was like, I got to place this order. How do I do that? Because I didn't even know how to place an order at that point. And they were like, no, that product's not in stock.
Nice.
The drop shipping dream. They were like, but we can have it in 3 weeks. So then I had to call up the customer, pretend like this wasn't my first sale to the customer and say, can you wait 3 weeks for it? And they were like, luckily they were like, yeah, that's cool.
Well, was there any reaction? I mean, like, I can specifically remember mine. Like, were you a fist pump? Anything? I know you don't show a whole lot of emotion.
No, I don't. No, probably not as much as a lot of people. But yeah, no, I was super, super happy. Probably a bit nervous, that nervous sort of excitement you get, because I was kind of a bit like, oh, now I've got to fulfill on this thing and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it was I guess, and a lot of relief as well, because to that point, you put in a ton of work, been spending money on ads as well for no return. Because I mean, you're right. I think that first sale for me, I was 10 days after I started paying for ads, and I'm paying, I don't know what I was paying at the time, 30, 40, 50 bucks a day on ads. I hadn't made any money. And so that first sale, like, it's like a flood of relief, right? Like, oh, there's actually something here, right? Yeah, I can do something here. It's that bit of validation, and that then spurs you to, okay, so there's something here. Now I'm going to, really keep pushing on with it.
Dude, my story's pretty similar to yours in that, well, number one, I worked at 4 a.m. at my job. So it was almost midnight, and I'm still laying in bed awake on a Sunday night, right? I work Monday morning, and my hours would always get screwed up on the weekend. It's like midnight, I'm still awake laying in bed, and all of a sudden, I'm looking at my phone, reading something, and cha-ching! I was like, I just jumped out of bed. I ran to the living room. I'm dancing like a little girl. My wife's like, what happened? I'm like, I did it. I sold one. Like, I was just so thrilled. But just like your story, they weren't out of stock, but that order, it happened in April, I want to say. I sold it to Duke University. They never got their 3D printer, like a functional 3D printer, until August. Like, they got one, it was damaged. It took 2 months to get them another one. It was damaged. And I was just like, holy shit, like, is this how dropshipping's going to be? Like, nobody tells you about all the stuff that doesn't work, right?
Yep.
There was plenty of other headaches that went on, but it's funny that, most of our first sales had some issues. I'm glad I didn't have to call a customer right away, because I don't know, I would have been scared out of my mind, I'm sure.
Oh, well, yeah. And it happens to a lot of people, of course, because when you first start, you don't know how to avoid those issues. Mm. And for anyone who's listening to this for the first time and going, wow, this business model sounds like a nightmare, those sort of issues, when you know what you're doing, are completely avoidable.
Yeah. But that is the downside of dropshipping. It's somebody else's product, right? And so they don't always tell you when it's out of stock. You usually find out because you're getting extra traffic, because everybody else is out of stock and they marked it out of stock, and you're getting a ton of traffic, and all of a sudden you get a few sales and you're like, wow, this product's really hot. And then you call your manufacturer and they're like, yeah, we haven't had those in 2 months.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, it's like any business model, man. There's upsides and downsides. The beauty of this is it's quick to start. It's low cost to start. And that sort of thing. But there's flip sides to that. Yeah, it's not your product. You're not in control of the inventory. At least not in the beginning. If you get a good relationship with a supplier, you can have some influence there. But
I'm shocked you weren't more emotional on your first sale. Like, I can picture, I'm driving to a minor league baseball game with my brother and my friend Ben and my friend Bo, and this is like, I don't know, it's got to be like my 6th or 7th business at that point. And I've been waiting and waiting for a sale, and all of a sudden, cha-ching, we're listening to some song and the whole truck goes cha-ching, right? And I just as loud as I can, and they're like looking at me, and I cranked up some random song, and I'm just like, it's like such an amazing feeling, man, when like what you built finally works. Like, I don't know, it's relief. It's I don't know how to explain it, man. It's such a wonderful feeling.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great feeling, and it's still a great feeling today. Like, when any sort of business I'm in, like, every time I make a sale, it's like fucking drugs, man.
Yeah, it is constantly chasing the dragon, right?
Like scientifically, I mean, you get that. I guess it's dopamine rush, dopamine hit. I mean, it's addictive. I'm not gonna lie. When you start getting more of those things rolling in, man, you want to chase it.
Yeah, it is. I get asked a lot. They're like, why don't you turn off those Shopify notifications? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I kind of enjoy looking down at my phone every hour or so and seeing some sales in there. I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you put in so much effort and work as well. Like, if you're doing it right, you're not coasting. Like you're pushing and seeing something. Like that's just a visual and a auditory signal that what you're doing is right. It's validation. It's like, no, you're not a crazy idiot, right?
Yeah.
There is actually a reason you're doing this, and it does work. And so all that hard work you're putting in is validated every time you see or hear that thing. And that's, I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's fun. It keeps you pushing on, you know?
No doubt. Talk me through like your next steps, because I can picture me working at a job. Heck, I was still working when I sold my first business, right? But I can remember sneaking out the front door of the warehouse to call customers back who had called me. You know what I mean? Like, I remember waking up and having to return call. I was working second shift at the time. I had to wake up and return calls at like 11 a.m. and make up some sort of excuse, right? Oh, hey, this is actually the founder of the company. My employees called in today, so I'm on the phone. You know what I mean? Just bullshit my way through this whole thing, right? Like, and nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about how you really got to hustle and do the things nobody wants to do to get where you want to be. Like, how long were you working your job, and what were some of the things you would do that, you know, that people probably don't even know about anymore?
Yeah. Look, I mean, definitely I stayed in my job after opening that first business for around 12 months, at least. It might have even been a little bit more. I kind of transitioned out of it though. So by that point, you know, I was fairly senior in my workplace, you know, this after 10 years. And so I had a bit of autonomy in terms of, you know, if I needed to take phone calls, I could just disappear and take phone calls and like, you know, all that stuff. Like I was leading a team, etc., you know, all that sort of thing. And I'd started taking my laptop into the office, so I'd have it sitting there next to my work computer and laptop and all that sort of stuff. And I'd like be typing on one, and then I'd get an order come in, and I'd go and type on the other one, and so I'd be doing that sort of thing. And
this stuff needs to be talked about more, man. Like my friend and former business partner Sean, he was doing the same thing. He would step into the break room and call customers back. Like at this point, he had checked out of his job, but like someone's got to handle this, right? Like I don't think anybody talks about how hard you got to work in the beginning, and it's not hard. It's just doing uncomfortable things, right? Like,
yeah. It was tough. It was tough to balance that for ages, you know, and it was stressful at times for sure. Particularly, you know, you got customers who aren't happy for some reason, right? You know, you got to be on the phone to them, but you've also got to do something for your job because your boss is breathing down your neck saying, oh man, you've got to get this done today. And you're like, you know, and this was before I'd obviously learnt the magic of outsourcing and, you know, got into outsourcing customer service and that sort of thing, and which I did do obviously later on, which was a huge game changer as well. But at that point, I hadn't done that, and so I was still doing it all myself, you know. And part of that was because my results were really up and down. Right? It was really patchy, and I didn't have the confidence to go out and spend money on hiring somebody to answer the phone for me because I didn't know. I knew that some weeks I could pay them, but maybe another week I wouldn't be able to, and so I just.
And will you have enough work for them? Right.
Or whether you would have enough work for them, absolutely. And so, but what I ended up doing with my job is that I actually negotiated for them to start letting me work from home, right, at part-time. So I started working from home 3 days a week, which of course I was not working my job 3 days for those 3 days a week primarily.
Yeah.
I was, so I got a lot more freedom there to actually not be feeling that pressure of, oh, are people going to think I'm doing this or that or whatever. And that's not to say that I stopped doing my job, but the reality was at that point I could do all the work I needed to do in less than a 40-hour or 50-hour working week, right? A lot of any job is the expectation that you're just going to be there looking like you're working. Like, you tell me someone who works in an office job for 8 to 10 hours a day is working productively 8 to 10 hours a day. Well, we know they're not. There's like oodles of science that says that they're probably only really productive for 3 to 4 hours of that time. The rest of the time, they're just fucking around. So that was it. I would still get my work done, but I would just push really hard to get it done so that I would then have time to work on my business. And so I did that for that sort of part-time working at home and whatnot from my home office, probably for about 4 or 5 months. And by that point, you know, as I say, around 12 months, I had enough. My sales got more consistent on the e-commerce store, and I had enough profit coming in that I could afford I hadn't replaced my income fully at that point because I was on a 6-figure income, right, from my job. But I had enough that I could support myself and my family. And at that point, I got out of my job and went full time with e-commerce, man, which was in and of itself, like after that first sale, that was crazy, man. That was a crazy feeling. Quit your job to be support yourself off your business, which is still pretty new, and you think it's there, but is it really there? Is it really stable enough? That's so easy to second guess yourself. And
so mine went the other way, man. I didn't get the pleasure of quitting. I got fired. So. I tried to quit. Well, I said, look, I sold my business. I don't need to work here anymore. And they were like, how would you like to work just 2 days a week and we'll let you keep your insurance, which at the time it still is, right? In America, it's hard to get insurance without having a job that's affordable. And so I was like, yeah, I'll work 2 days a week. But at that point, I was the worst employee known to man. Like, I didn't work very hard on those 2 days. I've got a pretty big mouth on me that can be used for good. It was not used for good at that time. I talked a lot of shit to my bosses and said a lot of things I probably shouldn't have said. And one day it caught up with me and they were just like, you know what? You look like you're having a lot more fun at home. Why don't you stay there? I was like, okay, I guess I'm going home today. But it was still equally a good feeling. I remember driving. So my mom's ashes are in a lake that I visit often. I remember driving to the lake and I just sat there and I was like, why don't I feel bad right now? Like, why doesn't this hurt? And I couldn't stop smiling. I was like, this is the beginning of something amazing right now. I just knew it. I just knew it was a turning point. Like you're saying, it was a very joyous moment.
And so you said you sold that business while you were still working that job?
Yeah. I sold it was the 3dprinterguy.com. To be fair, I want to ask you about yours too, because like the people I sold it to were fucking assholes, man. I hope they're listening. Fuck you. You're an asshole. Like I did not enjoy them at all. I sold it through Empire Flippers. Not the greatest experience, if I'm honest, but I like them. I like Justin and Joe. It was good.
Yeah.
And then the people who bought it, like magically, they put, I don't even know the right way to say this. I wasn't answering the phones anymore, right? So when I own it, I answered, I closed people. I'm getting that sale, right? I'm getting mine. They put somebody on the phones with a heavy accent, and he didn't know anything about 3D printers, which I didn't either, but man, am I good at Google. So I let it go to voicemail and I would call those people back, or I would Google while I'm on the phone with them and answer questions. And so the first month they had the business, it just tanked, right? Like they were still getting the clicks, they were still getting the phone calls, but they weren't closing anything. And so they tried to renege on the deal. They called up Empire Flippers and they were like, this isn't doing the numbers that you promised it would do. So I got on a call with them and I started coaching the guy on the phone. I was like, here's your problem. Every number looks the same except you're not closing the deals. Here's some advice. A week later, still no sales. They called or emailed or called, whatever. Got me and Joe from Empire Flippers on the phone. And the guy he wasn't cordial at all, right? Immediately he's starting to like implicate me. He's yelling at Joe. He's saying, you're culpable here. This is your fiduciary duty to make sure this is happening, or like that we're getting the sales you promised us we would get. And Joe just lost his shit on them. And he was like, you know what? Fuck you, dude. Call my lawyer, and hung up on the guy. And that's the last time I talked to him. I tried to help him beyond that. They had like the good cop, bad cop business partnership. So the good cop kept keeping in touch with me and I would give him advice. I would answer his questions. I would tell him, any question he had for like 3 months, I helped them. And then I stopped hearing from them. And then I don't even know, about a year ago, I would casually go back to that site and just, I wonder where they're at today. Right. And I noticed for years, it was the same site. Nothing had changed at all. Zero had changed on there. And I'm looking back like, fuck man, if I knew what I knew now, I would go in there and I would just blow up this business. And I never reached out. I actually thought about buying it back at one point, and I said, screw it. And then I looked one day and it was gone. And it's completely gone. So if you want to go back on the Wayback Machine and check out the 3dprinterguy.com, you'll see my handiwork back in the day. Not bad for a first business. I think it looks okay, right? But yeah, it's not great. So what about yours, man? Where's your business nowadays?
Yeah, well, I mean, people can go back and check that one out as well. It's chicchandeliers.com.au. That one's still online, so you can go and look at it. In fact, my face is still on it. And my name is still on it on the About Us page.
Oh, really?
And that really speaks to the people that picked that one up.
So I've sold one where it says that too. It still says, hey, this is bad.
Still says it.
I'm like, what are you
I don't own it anymore, so don't blame me for what you see on it now. But yeah, look, probably a similar experience from me, not to the extent of what you experienced there with them trying to come back, renege on the deal. But yeah, I definitely sold it. Got a price I was happy with. I sold through Empire Flippers as well, similar to you, and probably had a similar experience there. But you're right. I mean, they do some great things and some things a bit more average, I think. But and yeah, the guys that picked up my store completely flopped it. And it boggles my mind because I see this a lot with these businesses. I've coached or helped quite a few people out who have picked up a business that they've picked it up and then a month or two later the revenue's just gone way down. Or whatever. It's quite common, and particularly in that sort of in that smaller business space, but it's really weird. And I was actually quite annoyed because like these guys, I'd talk to them on the phone around the time of the sale, and I'd be like, guys, man, I'm happy to fully support you for months. Like I'll work alongside you to make sure that the marketing stays up, keeps up, that you're doing the right things. They hadn't done this before, right? They'd been kind of involved with like some online marketing, but not e-commerce and not drop shipping. I was like, you guys need some help. I'm happy to help you. Never heard from him again until maybe the first time was like maybe a year later. They got in touch with me and they were like, oh yeah, like it's just not really working for us and stuff. They didn't say like anything about undoing the deal or anything, because at that point it was far too late anyway. But I was just like, yeah, well, what are you doing? And they're telling me, and I was just like, that's not what you should be doing. You're just not doing the right, like this is a specific business model. You need to market it in a specific way. If you do something else, it ain't going to work. And I heard from him again, like after 2 years, same story. Can you give us some pointers? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. You need to do this. Still not doing it. So, I mean, I can see looking at that site's stats, like on Ahrefs or anything like that, like there's not much traffic going in there, and I don't know. I don't get that mentality, man. Like, you spend a lot of money on something. Like there's a big chunk of cash. It was a 6-figure sum, right? And you're not open to talking to the person who built the business about how you should run it. Like,
what do you attribute that though to? You just said I've met a lot. I think you even helped somebody who bought one of my businesses.
I did actually.
And so like, what do you attribute? Do you think it's like people buying these businesses just assuming they're going to like magically run on their own, or like, where do you attribute the failure rate?
Yeah, I think, well, particularly with the online, like I'm not going to comment about physical business and buying physical businesses and what the mentality is there, because that's not a space I have any experience whatsoever in. So I'm not going to pretend to, but I think in the online space, these days, people hear the story so much that it's a walk in the park. It's
passive
easy.
income, right?
Passive income. Fuck, no business is passive income. What a lie. That they believe then all they need to do is go and buy a business that's already successful rather than building one themselves, and it will automatically just be successful because it has been successful. But what they're not realizing is, and to be fair, sometimes the people selling the websites do lie about this.
No doubt. Yep.
Is the effort that's been put in to keep that business running the way it's running. The knowledge that's been built up that can't be transferred to the new owner easily. Right? And if there's no offer to transfer that knowledge, and that person who's picking that site up isn't experienced in that area, like there's no way it's going to just continue on the same. That's not the way an online business works. Maybe like an affiliate, no, not even affiliate sites, man. Maybe to a point, those can be a bit more predictable and stable in some sense. But an e-commerce business, particularly, like, and a drop shipping business, which basically lives or dies by its marketing. You don't know how to market. You can't run a high ticket drop shipping business to like generate, what most people would think is a significant amount of revenue. Like you can't. And so most of the people I've seen that have picked up e-commerce businesses and the results have dried up or disappeared, or they've not had the experience they were expecting, are the people who are buying in for the first time. Like there's another group of people who are investors and they have a portfolio and they've got a lot of experience in that space, and they don't have the same experience. But the first time guys who have got and girls who have got a big chunk of change for some reason, and they've heard the stories about these freedom businesses and blah, blah, blah. And they go, oh yeah, I can do that. I'll shortcut my way by just spending my big chunk of change and not putting in the hard yards to learn. Almost always they have a bad experience. And then they've got to work back from that. Some of them don't. Some of them they just take that loss. But I know a few people, and I still work with a couple who, they had that experience and then realized what they didn't know, but then were like, well, yeah, all right, great. I don't want to lose this money. I'm gonna go out and learn it. I'm going to get good at that, and I'm going to turn this around.
I don't think some people still learn it right. Like the one I think you helped of one of the businesses I sold, I just wanted to offload it. It was doing okay. I was doing all the work, and I had other priorities, right? A business that was growing rapidly. He gave me a lowball offer, and I took it, right? And I once again kept an eye on that business for a while, and it still looks the exact same today, right? I actually tried to take it back, right? When I knew I was exiting the business that I just exited, I was like, I'll take it back just for fun on the side. And I shot him a low ball offer, and he was about to take it, and then he magically got like 3 sales, right? And he's like, oh, the price is going to change. It's got to go up now. Are you willing to pay more? And I was like, what? All right. Good luck getting those next 3 sales that might be magical for you. And I don't know. That was the end of that. So yeah, I don't think some people change. I think some people think they're going to get, passive income, right? They're going to get that business that's just going to make them, like, I don't know, if you go look at any of these brokerage sites, it tells you what they made in the last year, right? And yeah. Are they just going to the site and they're seeing, made 120,000 profit next year, I can just buy this and immediately I'm going to make 120,000 profit next year? I can't imagine what they're thinking. They don't realize that they got to, operate a business, especially at the low levels, right? Like some of the businesses I've sold were, under 50K, right? That first business I sold was 40K, which for me was a year's salary. It was a great day, but what do you expect when you get a business that's like that, right? Like you have to know you're going to be doing everything. I was in the ads every day. I was answering the phone every day. I was responding to emails. I was finding the little opportunities where like a supplier would be like, I got 3 left. Do you want all 3? Yes, I want all 3, right? At this special price. So I still have them. Like I don't know, man. You got to hustle, especially at those low levels.
Yeah, and this is where I think there's a bit of a problem with those type of businesses at that level, is that at the same time that you're doing all that work, you've got your brokers on the side saying, hey, listen, what you need to do to get a good multiple is say that it's outsourced. because people who are buying business don't want to do all that work. Now, this is what happens, right? You've got to, you've got to be able to make it sound like it's not 40 hours a week work, because nobody wants to do that when they buy a business. So, and they don't tell you got to lie about that, but the inference there is, all right, when you get on the phone with a buyer, make it sound like it's not so much work. And that's what happens in a lot of cases, because the people who are selling often really want to sell and they really want to get the best multiple they can. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that they lie about the numbers, because that's hard to lie about. You've got Google Analytics. You can look in the Shopify account. You can see if orders are legitimate. You can't lie about the numbers, but you can sort of stretch the truth quite easily about some other things to do with these businesses. And hearing both sides of some sales that I've been advising people on, I can see that happens.
Yeah, I've been looking to acquire a business for a little bit here, and I've been reading a lot of listings on some of those internet marketplaces. And you're right. Like a lot of them say, made 80 grand last year in profit, works 2 hours a week. And I'm like, no, come on, man. No, you don't. Like, that's just, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, maybe some weeks you do.
Yeah, certainly. You're right. Maybe some weeks you do, when you grind for a while and then you get to have a couple weeks where you don't grind. But come on, 2 hours a week.
Yeah, no, I don't buy it.
It's frustrating.
I don't buy it.
Look, we spun off there in a big tangent, but to answer your original question, yeah, I was still working. I sold that first business. I sold the 3D printer guy for like $39,500, something like that.
That's pretty good.
Which is what I was making a year in America. So I was thrilled. Yeah, I was thrilled, and I kind of used that as leverage. Like I said, I was like, I don't need to work here anymore. In reality, I was 40K in debt. myself and my wife were didn't really have anything on the burner at that point. I sold my business. I actually had a couple people. I'm not sure if I want to talk about this story a whole lot, but there's a couple people that came to me and they were like, "How would you like to invest in our business? It doesn't make any money, but you can have 10% for $8,000, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I just got 40. Here's $8,000."
Yeah.
It ended up working out in the end, like very, very well. But I didn't get to do anything in the business, and I just got to sit back. And I'm pretty sure they just used my money as seed money to get the business going. But like that's all I had going at that point. I didn't have another store. I didn't have anything else. So, what about you, man? You sold your store. Obviously, you got paid a little bit more than I did. Actually, a whole lot more if I remember right. But what did you have going? Was there anything else on the back burner? And then where did you transition to next?
Yeah. So when I sold, I'd been doing a few other things that had sort of come up. So I had a couple of other smaller high ticket dropshipping businesses going, but nowhere near to that. They were kind of just bubbling along on the side. But by that time, I had probably in the year before I sold it. Like over time, because being online, part of various communities, and you're talking about the things you're doing and what you know and what's working for you and all that sort of thing. And obviously, in part, you're talking about some of the results you're getting. I was getting a lot of people coming to me and saying, "Hey, man, can you help me with this? Sounds like what you're doing is really working for you. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me with this?" And so, and I'm talking about things like running people's ads, giving them advice on their web design and all this sort of stuff. And I'd started just kind of doing that, like just helping people out, not for any real sort of money or anything, just like because I like to help people, right? Like, I'm experiencing success. And I want to help other people experience that success, who I can see are trying just as hard as I was trying. I remember what that experience was like to get things started and how hard it is. And so I'd started doing that, and that went on for a while, and it started coming in greater numbers. And I was kind of like, well, clearly people want to pay for this stuff, Well,
and you knew me back then too, right? Like me and Clint Paca, and we were rocking eCom Fire, I think, back then, and we were coaching tons of people, right, for like $100 an hour or something like that, which was huge money to me back then. By the way, huge money. I couldn't believe people were paying me $100 to talk to them for an hour.
Yeah, and I also took up a gig back then doing the coaching for the high ticket dropshipping program.
Oh yeah.
We both went through.
Yeah.
I did that for about at least a year, maybe more.
What were you getting paid for that? Like $80 an hour, something like that? Like it was decent money, right? And
it wasn't bad, and it was in US dollars. So the thing I love about is that I'm in Australia, so charging things in US dollars is good for me.
And just free leads too, right? Like we were telling our journey, which ended up bringing tons of people over from that course anyway. And you were embedded in the course.
Yeah. So I did that for a while, and so that all kind of culminated anyway, to cut that story short, of around the time that I sold that first business, of me saying, well, I got so many people asking me to help them out. Why don't I just turn that into a business, right? So coaching people, providing services. And I kind of had this idea at that point that, maybe I'll go down the agency route. Like maybe I should start a little agency, where I just focus on, because the things I was really passionate about at that point were like Google Ads, search engine marketing, and a couple other things, email marketing and these sort of things. I was pretty good at that, and so I thought, and I enjoyed doing it at that time as well. And I thought, well, I enjoy doing it. It's fun for me. I love talking about it. I love doing it. So people want to pay me to do it. Great, I'll do that. Once again, a fairly naive sort of thought process, and looking back on it, I think parts of that were a good thing for me to do, and for other reasons it wasn't. But so I started doing that more and more, created a little business around that, and I more actively started looking for people to, provide those services to, and do that, coaching with. And so that kind of filled up a lot of the space that was left when I sold that business, and the income as well. But yeah, like I got a nice big chunk of change out of that for sure. Which meant it wasn't uber imperative for me to replace the profit from that business, the cash flow from that business immediately at the same level. You know what I mean?
So did you find like it was difficult to be motivated? Like you got a much bigger pay than I did, right? You didn't need the cash flow. Certainly you were set up for a couple of years, right? Essentially you get about three times the profit that was coming in the business just landed in your pocket, right? So like, did you find it hard to be motivated, or like the agency thing was just shiny enough to be like, let's do this?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it was hard to be motivated, but definitely I probably didn't push as hard to build that business as I probably should have, to get momentum going and to really promote it and do all of that sort of thing. But then once again, it's a completely new business model for me, right? So I was doing something completely new. I had once again, just the same as when I started a e-commerce business, I had no idea about that. Going into doing like providing services for people, like a service-based business, I had no idea how to start or run one of those either. Didn't know anybody who did or anything like that. So once again, I was just going off on another leap of faith.
Where did you decide to, like, obviously you probably had a bunch of leads already, right? You were coaching people in that course. So a ton of people were like, John, run my ads, I would assume, right? Like, how did you set your rates? Did you set up contracts? Like, how did you do any of this stuff? Or you were just like, fuck it, I'm just going to wing it and figure it out?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Wing it and figure it out. So, yeah. I mean, obviously then I went out and I knew obviously I needed to educate myself about this stuff. So I started to do that. But I didn't have any sort of pre-existing knowledge or experience or mentors or anything like that in my pocket to sort of, once again, find some of those shortcuts. Like, yeah, do you need a contract? How do you structure that contract? What's the sweet spot in terms of pricing for a monthly service for some of these things? Like, yeah, I had no idea about any of that. I was just kind of winging it.
Between me and you were underpriced back then. You made me a couple websites back then. It was like a couple $100, and I was like, "Yeah, 100%. You could do this for a couple $100."
And that's pretty much anybody who gets into that stuff for the first time underprices themselves, right? Because you have that fear that I'm not. Like, it's different to e-commerce, right? Now you're putting a price on yourself. Like, it's easy to put a price on a physical product, right? Yeah. But when you got to put a price on yourself, it's a lot harder. And you have that, you get that self-doubt, that nagging self-doubt that what if I'm not actually worth that much? Am I worth that much? Am I being unrealistic? Am I ripping people off? Blah, blah, blah. You have that. And so almost anybody who starts doing services underprices.
Does it ever go away for you? For me, I still have that imposter syndrome, at least to a little extent. It's there every day.
No, it never goes away. And you'll hear even much more successful people than us will say the same thing. They still get that sometimes, and yeah, it's tough. I think I do still struggle with that, and I think that goes back to, the idea that you should charge somebody, like some people out there charging, you want an hour of my time, it's $10,000. Like, now I'm not saying that they're not worth that, or the knowledge that they might, rain down on you is not worth that or whatever. But think back to like being a kid and whatever. Like your whole upbringing says that that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like $10,000 an hour. No way. Nobody makes that much money. Like, that's reserved for, like, I don't know. Like, not even the president makes that much money, for fuck's sake, of your country.
I think you're explaining why we suffer from imposter syndrome, right? Like, these are the thoughts that never go away. These are the beliefs we built. And so
I think it gets ingrained in you, or at least for people our age. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but and in Australia as well, where we have this tall poppy syndrome, like, people here will say there's no reason anybody should earn $10,000 an hour. There is nothing you can do that's worth that much money. Like, that's what people would say. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of money, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm not charging $1,000 an hour, of course, in full disclosure. But even like if I charged $500 an hour, right? I'm still making more money than pretty much most people with a job in this country. Any job at any level, right? It's hard. It's easy to have that doubt come in and say, well, but once again, like, I always put that back to, well, if the value is there, and the good thing about like working with people in e-commerce and stuff is you can see the value that you deliver. Like if I go out and I work with somebody and they make an extra, $500,000 in revenue that year from what we put together and I help them do, then I can justify them paying me thousands of dollars to do that.
I suffered from that for a while.
I know that now, though.
Yeah, we were just talking how I was telling you, I mean, this is back in 2016. I told you I was charging $100 an hour, right? Just last year, I'm at a mastermind with, I would call him my mentor, George, at the time. And he was like, what do you charge? And I was like, $100 an hour. So that was 3 years later. Like I hadn't realized it. And he was like, all right, you're going to present, at the next one. And when anybody comes up to you, you tell them your rate is $500 an hour. And I remember just like cringing, like thinking of the thought of charging $500 an hour. And he's like, how much value are you going to bring people if you tell them the knowledge that you have? And I was just like, oh, like it didn't click right away, man. It didn't click that it wasn't the time I was giving them. It was like the value I was giving them, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's also important too, I think, like if you say, like we fool ourselves into thinking that people are going to be happy with a cheap price. A lot of people aren't looking for a cheap price. Like if you say your price is cheap, they'll assume that you're cheap, that your value is cheap, right? And so if you want to attract people on the bottom end of the market, then they're going to be looking for cheap. But if you want to work with the best people, well, when I say maybe not the best people, or successful people,
Careful.
who already have a successful business that they're looking to take to the next level, and you're going to provide them a service or some sort of advice or consulting or whatever it is, then they're not looking for somebody who's cheap. They're looking for somebody who's the best. And they know that the best will attract the best rates, and they're happy to pay that. And so if you say, it's $100 an hour, mate, they're going to go, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, and to be fair, I was scared to do it, right? Scared out of my mind. And since then, I've gotten 0 no's. Not a single person has said no. Everyone's like, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
They just pay it. They're happy to, right? And I'm happy because I see the results. Like I realized, and again, the smaller businesses are what you're going to get at a smaller rate, right? And so the bigger businesses came in at the bigger rate, and the levers I could immediately pull to like increase their revenue or free up time for the founder were unbelievably like so clear. Like here's a lever to pull. As soon as I walked in, it would take like 10 minutes analyzing their business, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. And so by charging more, I was working with businesses that were like, I don't know, just more clear for me to work with. I could bring way more value.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And look, I mean, I think if you're just starting out, like I can get why for a period you might go at a lower rate just to attract some people so you can get some case studies or some testimonials or whatever. I think there's value to that because those things are very valuable for you, but you need to have a roadmap of, right, I'll start here, but this is when I'm going to move to that level, and I am going to move to that level. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, get some success, a few good stories in, and then I'm going to.
So your agency didn't start with 39 reviews right out of the gates?
It did not. No, it did not.
That's crazy. So look, you started that, like, obviously I told you pricing was too low. Like I'm sure you had to start there though, right? Like you probably got a lot of people on board, and you probably made some massive shifts for people. Did you start liking it? Is it like it was probably shiny in the beginning and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants, but obviously you started learning how to do it better and better. Is it something that grew on you, or?
In some respects, yes, and in some respects, no. I mean, I love, and I still do it today. I love working with people. I love working with other entrepreneurs and helping them make, the shifts that they need to make, either in themselves or in their business. And I think I'm very good at that. I think I'm very good at helping people find those pathways and changing what they're doing. With that stuff though, like providing a service, like let's say, for example, managing someone's Google ads. The bit I never liked was that, and the bit that used to cause me the most stress was, like, I'd be running really great Google ads, but they'd be screwing up some other part of the business. Mm. I mean, this is the thing with ads. So of course the business is not converting as well as it should be. So whose fault is that?
It's my fault. Yours, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I like that disconnection between the ads management or whatever, and what was, maybe they were screwing up their customer service or whatever. And you're making sales, but the sales aren't getting finalized, or they're having a lot of refunds or whatever. It just really used to drive me bonkers. And even when I'd give these people, I was working with advice, like, hey, some friendly advice, you should try doing this, this, and this. And they'd be like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's to me, that just never felt good for me. Like I just didn't enjoy that aspect of it. And yeah, some people say, well, they're just paying you to do your service, just do the service and shut up. And it's like, yeah, but that's fine if you feel good doing that. But I just never felt good doing that. I wanted to work with people who are more open to doing just what they needed to do to change their business. And it didn't matter if I was telling them about Google Ads or something else in their business to, maybe on their site or in their email marketing or whatever, to improve their conversions, that they'd actually be open to listening to that and taking it on board. And so I think over time, that's kind of what led me away from doing the services stuff, which I don't really do anymore at all. Because I wanted to move more towards actually helping people shift their business in whatever way it needed to be shifted. And we're talking about e-commerce businesses here now. The other thing I didn't like about the agency business, which once again, I didn't even think about this when I started, right? Because I just wanted to give it a crack or whatever. And I do love trying new things, it's fair to say, is of course the scale with an agency business is by hiring staff. Right? At more clients, more staff, more clients, more staff, more clients, more staff, right? And I realized this at some point, and I thought, man, I left a decade-long career working with employees and managing staff, and I don't want to do that again. I'm just not interested. I don't want a team of, if you compare that business to an e-commerce business, you need about a fifth of the employees to scale an e-commerce business to the same size as you do an agency business. I was just like, I don't want to have 20 employees. I don't want that responsibility. I don't care for it. That's just not what I want to do with my life. And so when I kind of went through that thought process and just realized that's just really not what I want. And it's cool for some people, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great business model for the right people. I was just like, I've got to get out of this. I've got to start transitioning back out of this now.
I got to ask you, who's that right for, though? Because I've thought about being a service business. I've been asked many, many, many times, will you just come in and run our Google ads? Will you just head up the SEO side of our company, right? And I can't imagine it, man. To me, that seems like so many downsides. A lot of what you were just saying of I'm going to see all the other things that are wrong with your business, and I'm not going to be able to shut up about it, right? And it's going to hinder my productivity, right? Let alone I want to move things forward at a pace most people don't want to keep up with. And so if I want to move this fast, I'm going to be relying on everyone else, right? And that's not why I'm an entrepreneur in the first place. I don't know. Yeah, I struggle with that. I get asked to this day. I was asked last week, hey, will you come run our ads? And number one, I wouldn't know even how to price it to be fair. And number two, I don't know if I could do it. So who is that right for? Have you met some people who are doing service-based businesses, and is there an archetype, if you will, of people who that just works? That is a very long pause for
it is
service-based folks.
I'm trying to think. I mean, yes, I've met people who are doing well with that business model, and at least to me, seem to enjoy doing that sort of business model. And I don't know, it's a funny one.
I feel like it's a transition model.
Yeah, because to me, and some people are going to hate me when I say this for sure.
That's good.
People that want to run an agency and essentially work directly for other people, because your client thinks you're working for them, right?
Yeah. Whether
you think you're working alongside them as their partner or however you want to management speak that's not how most of them think about it, right? They think I'm paying you, you're working for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what to do, right? For me, those people kind of feel like people who'd like to work a job.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a criticism by any sense, right? It's kind of once again, I felt less in control of what I was doing that business model than I did, say, running my own e-commerce businesses. And yeah, sure, you could probably make the argument that, well, in an e-commerce business, your customer's really in control because they got to buy your product, and if they're not happy, blah, blah, blah. But and I might have been doing the agency stuff wrong. I'm not going to pretend that I was fantastic at that. Like, I didn't grow some massive business doing it. Like, I made money, sure, but I'm not out there crowing, oh, I'm one of these guys that made an 8-figure agency, blah, blah, blah. I'm not selling the course on start your own agency, right?
Yet.
Which it seems like everyone does at the moment. No, I will never do that. I'll make that commitment right now. I'm never going to do that.
I do think it's an easy model to get into, right? I think if you can learn one skill, like there's a lot of arms to digital marketing, but if you can learn one of them well, you can start a business like this, right? And like, I think it's absolutely a transition type business, right? I think it's a great place that people could get started and utilize their free time to learn more skills and either expand the agency or start one of their own businesses where they would use more of those skills. And I think so long as you have the good clientele, right, that aren't all over your case or starting and then stopping and then starting, you know, there should be some decent cash flow there too, I would suppose.
Yeah. And I think the other thing as well, like being sort of in that space and being exposed to other businesses in that space and really looking at what some other businesses were doing and picking up clients who had been with other agencies and stuff like this, like, it kind of feels really dirty often as well. Like, you know, like a lot of the agencies out there, they're just like, sometimes the business model just feels like a churn and burn one. Like, yeah, right, you're just going to bring on as many clients as you can. You know, you're not going to do a good job for at least half of them. They're going to leave after 3 months to 6 months, and you're just going to pick up more of them. And your business model's built around that. Yeah, we're going to make money off some longer term, and that's going to cover the ones we lose and all this sort of stuff. And it's kind of like, yeah, but why do you want to run a business like that? Like, you know, and like so many people just get the wool pulled over their eyes by agencies, and it's amazing. Like all the stories I've had of people who have come to me are like, oh yeah, I worked with this big agency and I got better results running my own ads, you know, but I've spent like 10 grand with them. It's just like, it's just, yeah, it just never felt like a good fit for me for all sorts of different reasons. And that's just me. Once again, like I said, it's nothing to say that inherently there's anything wrong with that business model or that there's not people that can do fantastic with it, but it just never felt great for me. I always loved the thing I always loved though was working with people to help them, like other entrepreneurs. Like that was the bit that I really enjoyed out of it.
I remember you doing this, right? It was called Forefront. Is that right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I remember you running that. And then like at some point, myself and another guy, we built some courses for e-commerce, right? And we asked you to come in. Were you still running like your agency at that point when we asked you to come in? Because we asked you to create a course for us, and then that turned into you like coaching for us, and that turned into a whole bunch of stuff, right? And so I wasn't sure if you were still running the agency at the time.
I was, yeah. I mean, I started working with you guys on that like that was more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I want to say, I think more than 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. And once again, I mean, the appeal for that for me was, you know, that I think, not that I necessarily maybe thought about that at the time, but it kind of aligned more with what I enjoyed about the agency stuff, which is doing things and being involved with something that was helping other business owners to, you know, make the sort of shifts they need to make to be more successful at their business and to, you know, hit their goals, achieve the things that they want to achieve with their life and their business. And so I think that's why I started working with you guys on that.
But you're essentially still doing the same thing, right? Like courses, agent. I don't know. You remember the struggles, right? We couldn't get half the people to even log into the damn courses, which is unbelievable to me that people would pay and not log into courses. I guess, you know, knowing more people, that's how that works. But essentially the same thing, right? Your agency, you're doing the work for them. Courses, you're trying to teach them to do it, right? Even then, you were doing the coaching calls for us for that business. Where's the transition point from there? Where does it go from, you know, being a coach in a few different aspects, right? Being a coach for that course, being a coach for yourself, being a coach for our company, running an agency. How do you shift into like right now you're doing a completely different thing, right? You've shifted almost into full on teacher and mentor and supporter of businesses, right? And where is that transition? Where did running an agency and being a coach fizzle out and shift?
There was a point, probably I would say about 12 months ago, from when probably a little bit earlier than 12 months, maybe 14 or 15 months ago, where I was I was doing all these different things. I was going around in circles. I was guilty of that sort of cardinal business sin of shiny objects and taking too many new things on at once, and not having any focus, not being focused on keeping the one thing, whatever that saying is, keeping the main thing. And I just hadn't worked out what the main thing was, right? I wasn't clear on that. Like, what was my main thing? Like, what was I really doing? What was I focused on? I didn't really have any focus. And so I kind of just sat down and I was and I just wasn't really progressing anywhere. Like, I mean, I wasn't doing bad. I was making money. I mean, I'm 6 years in, 5 years into supporting myself entirely off business, right? So I'm still here in the most expensive country in the world, almost. I'm not doing bad, but I just still wasn't moving ahead. Like, I wasn't making any significant jumps either. And, I just thought, it feels like I'm going around in circles too much. So I just need to sit down and get clear on what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and just focus in on one thing and just do that really well. And so I sat down and I had to think about that. And of course I came back to, I'm really passionate about e-commerce, right? And I really love, and I'm very passionate about working with other people and helping them to, whether it's, resolve issues that they're feeling, whether it's, helping them put in place the strategy to grow their business, to break through plateaus, all that sort of stuff. But that's what I really love doing. That's what I've discovered I really love doing. And so I thought, okay, so that's pretty simple. I love e-commerce and I love working with people who own e-commerce businesses. So how can I do those things in a way that, avoids the things that I personally didn't like about the agency model and maybe about that just straight up courses model, but still obviously do something that's fulfilling for me and, of course, has room to grow, going to make money, all that sort of stuff as well. So that sort of led into two things, I guess. I kind of sat down and I said, well, I want to get back to the point where more of the money I make comes from e-commerce, like my own e-commerce businesses, but also that then led into me creating the e-commerce marketing program that I've created, and that's kind of what I'm still doing today.
So I love that you transitioned to that. Like, a lot of what you said resonated with me. It's actually been like ideas I've been tossing around. As you know, we talk every Friday. I tell you everything that I think sounds like a great idea, and then I tell you 9 reasons why I'm scared to do it. So I love that you've transitioned to that, because that's kind of what I'm thinking too, right? So how did you frame that out? Like, you just said, like, it makes money, it's scalable. It's more than a course, right? Can you help describe what it actually is? Because it's more than a course. It's a year-long thing, right?
Well, it is. I mean, I'm just about to. So it's called Build, Sell, Grow, Repeat, and it's just about to go back out on sale again. I haven't sold it for a few months now, but the idea behind it was, like, I want to do something that transfers my knowledge and experience to people who can make use of that in an e-commerce marketing sense, because that's what I'm best at, right? But I want to do it in a way where where there's a really high success rate. So part of that, like that thing that you were mentioning before, like, you can put out a course and just sell an online, like just a straight up e-commerce, like online course, and 80% of people who buy that are not going to even put it to use. 50%, a percentage won't even ever open it and look at it, even if it's worth $1,000, $2,000, whatever. Some people just buy these courses and never even look at them. And I was kind of like most online courses out there, like in the marketing space, seriously, the success rate is super low. It's like 5%, 10%, right? And you could argue, well, that's just business, right? Only a small percentage are successful, and that's true. But a lot of people out there are blowing on, oh, my course has so many successful students, and it's just that you've sold so much volume. The number of successful ones is actually pretty low, right? And I was just like, man, I want to do something where, the people who participate in it are actually very likely to be successful and I know are actually doing the work, right? They're actually picking it up and they're making use of that thing, right? And they are actually applying it in their business and they are growing their business, and I'm helping them to do that. And so part of my thinking was that a lot of the reason why people who, and I've learned this kind of from over the years of coaching people in setting up e-commerce businesses, is that what a lot of people really struggle with is they get the general knowledge in an online course, because an online course is only ever general knowledge, right? It's usually some dude goes, oh, I did this one thing in one business, and so I'm going to teach that as a system or a strategy or a series of tactics, and say to other people, well, just apply it the way I did and it'll work for you. No, that's not really true, right? I mean, the notion that every business is created equal is wrong, right? Every business has a different customer. They're in a different competitive landscape. They're in a different market. They're in a different industry. So there is no one size fits all for e-commerce businesses. It's easy to sell the idea that there is. But where a lot of people get stuck is they get that general knowledge and they really struggle to apply it in the specific way it needs to be applied to their business. So it's hard for them to envision the variations that they need to make to really make that work in their business. And so what I wanted to do is be able to give people the general knowledge that they need in a way that can be delivered, because you can't deliver a lot of general knowledge via coaching one-to-one, right? Because you're not going to coach somebody one-to-one for 50 hours, right? But also give people the ability to get that personalized help on how they need to actually apply it for their specific business, and the accountability and all of that sort of stuff to make sure they actually do it, and to be able to push them along to make sure they're making that progress, right? And so, yeah, that's when I came up, I put together this program, which is basically, a series of online modules, where you get the knowledge and all of that sort of thing, but then you're also working with me personally, either in one-to-one coaching or group coaching, to give you the insight into how you need to apply that to your business and make sure you stay on track, and all of that sort of thing.
This is the one-to-one and the one-to-group mostly Q&A, right? Like they've consumed the general knowledge and now they're asking you questions. How does that apply directly in this situation or in that situation?
Yeah, a lot. It's a lot of that, but it also gets into a whole bunch of different areas. Like with I've run a few groups of people through this program to date, and for a lot of them as well, it's really what they get out of it is also not necessarily like, so that the content of this program is all about various aspects of e-commerce marketing. So it's very much strategy and tactics stuff. But where a lot of people are struggling as well is just with themselves personally, like the mindsets, and how they are within their business and how they are when they're working on their business. So a lot of that one-to-one or group time actually, goes back into that. And so I find myself just helping people a lot with more the, just the personal side of business as well, which is more just about being able to talk to somebody who's been where you are, and has worked through those same thoughts, feelings, experiences in their mind, and can just help you step through it yourself, even without telling you what you need to do. Just actually having the opportunity to just spend some time with somebody who can help you step through what's going on in your brain, tell you you're not crazy, So many people are missing that, particularly when you're talking about small to medium-sized businesses where the business founder or owner is really up there by themselves and have like a senior management team or anything. I'm not saying that senior management team would be good for this anyway, but, maybe they just don't have the network in place yet to help them. They might not be able to afford to join a $10,000 a month mastermind or something, like where they can sit in a room and have a teary shoulder cry session or whatever. And so they a lot of people do get that from this sort of stuff.
Look, I found that just when I was coaching that people who I thought I had taken, I don't want to say far enough or to a certain level, but like we had done really well. I'd done all of the fundamentals. We had severely grown their business. They continued to buy coaching more so just to chat. Like we'd get on a call for an hour and we would just talk through some things man, entrepreneurship's lonely, especially at that small level. Like it's really hard to find people at that level that you can communicate with and really, if you don't get out of your house, if you don't go to conferences, if you don't buck up some money, like real money to travel and go meet people, it's pretty lonely, man, honestly. And it was that way for me too in the beginning. I live in, rural Wisconsin, kind of by the Twin Cities, Minnesota, but like there's no one around here I can talk to.
No. Yeah, you got to do it. And I think you mentioned it earlier. I mean, if failing anything else, finding any other network, like just find a coach or a mentor. Like, and even if it's not about the, learning like actual, things to do in your business, like you will get a lot of value just from having somebody in your life that you talk to regularly, right? That actually understands you, because nobody else understands doing this unless they've done it. You cannot understand it. Like, I love my wife, but she has no fucking understanding of what I do or what I experience doing it. I can't talk to her about it because she just blanks out half the time, blanks out. And I'm like, you just don't understand. That's not a criticism for her at all. Most people are in that boat. So you've got to go and find those people because, I did my business for, when I first started, but like without that for ages, like a really long time. And I'd take that back. I'd change that if I could. Yeah.
It's hard to do with friends too. Like my friends, or my brother specifically, he's hilarious. Like, I don't know. I was at a point of making, let's say, like $3,000 to $6,000 a month, which is more than I was making maybe $2,000 driving a forklift. I would say most people make that like $40,000 to $100,000 range. So I was just above that, and I would go, try to talk to people about things that were going on. Number one, they don't get it because they're just not involved, right? They don't understand the same problems. But I think I got a lot of feedback of. It must be nice to make that much money and have these little problems, right? Like it's really hard to find somebody near you to even talk to that's been through any of this stuff.
Yeah, totally. Even today, I mean, I know more people in the business space, obviously, than I did back then. But you still have to actively go out and seek out those opportunities to have those conversations with other people. Like they don't just come to you. Sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like you've got to actually actively make space in your life for that. You've got to fill up those spaces, with opportunities to share experiences, have conversations with, with other people who are either experiencing what you're experiencing right now, or even better, somebody who's been there and can give you, the insight back into what, into things that can help you, move from where you are to where you want to be.
So tell me more about this program. Like they sign up. Number one, they're getting a general knowledge, like they're getting an actual, learning center to log into and learn from you. They're getting group coaching. They're getting one-on-one coaching. This lasts a year. What else does this entail?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you've got the nuts and bolts of it basically there. So it's a month, like it's like a monthly program. It's month to month. Each month we attack a particular aspect of e-commerce marketing. So whether that's SEO, pay-per-click advertising, email marketing, some less common stuff like looking at how do you actually structure and build a marketing offer, like proper conversion rate optimization stuff, not the usual crappy tips and hacks on that stuff that gets perpetuated online. Retargeting, how to do retargeting properly. So many e-commerce businesses can't retarget to save themselves. So we go through that month by month. And so they get, that chunk of knowledge in the form of, online videos. We have a learning platform they log into, action plans, workbooks, etc. And then at various points during that calendar month, we have the calls. So they get a chance to consume that information and start implementing. And we have the calls to make sure that that's on track and those implementations are happening and they understand, they can work through it, and we can talk about any sticking points they have with that.
All right, I got so many questions here, man. From the business owner side, what's the drop off rate? Like, let's say you sign up 20 people to do this year-long thing. How what does that number stay 20 throughout the year, or does it, slowly some people start flaking off?
So I haven't done it for the year yet. I'm about to start selling it on the yearly basis. Previously, it's been a 2.5 to 3 month thing. So I put a bit less content into that time frame, and we would be doing, almost weekly calls for that.
Did
period.
You find flakes in
drop off rate?
Yeah, zero. Nice. All right, cool.
No drop off rate. I mean, people moved quicker than others, right? So some people the biggest feedback I got from doing that, doing it in that space of time. This is why I moved to the 12-month thing. Some people hear 12 months and go, wow, that's a really long time. Yeah, but dude, we're covering a lot of ground. Like, I mean, a lot, right? This is in depth as hell. People were saying, look, the content's fantastic. This is like no other e-commerce marketing course I've done, the things that we're talking about here. Like, you're covering gaps that no one else is talking about and all this sort of stuff, but it's too much. It's too much for me to process and implement and take advantage of the coaching space and that sort of thing. So after doing that a few times, I pulled it down and I said, well, how can I give people a better chance to be implementing this stuff as they go and not overload them, because they're already in a stressful situation, and as a business owner, I don't want to add more stress to them. And so now I've sort of, and a few people did say to me, look, you should run this. It'd be cool to do one of these topics per month, not per week. You know what I mean? And so that's how we've got back to, instead of 12 weeks, now 12 months. Right. And the good thing about that for me as well is that quite a few people, after going through that program, I think similar to what you mentioned before, they've come back and said, I just want to keep paying you so I can talk to you once a month. We can keep working through this stuff. And so doing it over 12 months as well, for me, ensures more consistency, more accountability, and just, because you need that in a longer term sense as well. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, talk to me again in 12 months' time, and I'll tell you if I was crazy or not.
So how did you charge the first time, and how are you going to charge this time?
So the first times I did it, I undercharged.
But what was it, a one-time fee up front?
It was a one-time fee.
And so for this 12-month one, are you going to try to do monthly, or are you going to make them commit? What are you going to do there?
They have both. They can take it annually. They can pay the 12 months up front, or we can do it monthly.
Look, and I'm asking selfishly, right? Like a lot of this stuff sounds like something I've been, pondering over on this notes app over here of like, will this work? Will this work? Right. Before coronavirus, I wanted to do these like 2-day intensives that led into something like this, like bring them into a year-long mastermind where we can, work through this stuff monthly and get together quarterly. And so I find this stuff fascinating, right? I want to know what's working, what's not working.
My preference is to get people to pay for it up front. Because I do like that commitment, right? But, also, I do also recognize that there are people out there who have businesses that have great potential to be successful that I can really help that maybe can't make that commitment up front. So that's why I put and I know that because I've been that person, right? When I was in my first business, which turned out to be really successful, which somebody could have helped me make much better, I didn't have a large chunk of money to invest in a program. So I would not have done it, even though I could have gone through it perfectly well and been successful with it, right? So I put the monthly thing in, but the kicker for me on the monthly thing is if you take the monthly option and you quit, you can't come back. So you can't take it, I'm going to do this month, but not the next month. I'm going to do the next month, because I'm teaching a system, right? You have to learn the full system for it to work properly. You can't just pick and choose what you want to learn. So that's the rule, though. You take monthly and you quit after 3 months, you're never allowed back in. You're out. That's it. So I do still want people to make that commitment to building their business, to changing their business, to changing their life ultimately. So that's the rule on the monthly.
So me, I love equity plays, right? Like, so have you considered putting that into play. I mean, there's so many different ways you could do it, right? You could do it right out of the gates. There's like you said, there's businesses out there who could use something like this, but they don't have the cash, right? I was in that position at one point. Obviously, you were in that position at one point. Equity makes a ton of sense. Then there's also the opportunity for you to like show them what you're capable of, right? And so, put an option at the end, like let's do this for a year. If we get to, let's say we grow your business by 100% or 50% at the end of this year, right? Which is all on them because they got to do the work. But like if that happens, like, then give me an option to buy into your company at, 5% to come on and advise you further, right? Is that something you've tossed around?
Definitely. And I do like, I mean, we've talked about it as well before. I mean, you know this, I know you're a fan of it, and I love that as an option, the equity option. I think both from my perspective or your perspective and the business owner's perspective, I think it can be a great option. Like I'm 100% comfortable putting my money where my mouth is. Like as in I'll take equity in a company, make no money initially on, even though I'm, helping that business grow, because I know that it will if that business implements what I know. And I'm 100% behind myself on that. I don't think I would take it for somebody to go through this particular program, but I'd want to manage that on more of a sort of one-to-one basis, like a bit separately. But I absolutely think that that's definitely a great option to pursue. This program, the Build, Sell, Grow, Repeat program, it's really for people whose revenue at the moment is between like $1 and $10 million. It's not suited for people who are doing more than $10 million a year in revenue with an e-commerce business. If somebody at that range wanted to work with me, we'd be talking about something different. And once again, there's options there. But yeah, the equity thing's great. I mean, I think it's something that probably a lot of newer business owners feel uncomfortable about, but it's more so because they don't understand it. So I don't know that it's necessarily something you can pitch at people without a bit of working with them already, I think.
Yeah. Looking from my side, I worry about being a dancing bear. Right? Roland Fraser talks about this a lot, being the dancing bear. So like, let's say, you put out this course for a while and you've helped hundreds and hundreds of students, right? At some point, you're not going to be able to do this anymore, right? And so once the dancing bear can't dance anymore, the money goes away. And I mean, real wealth is going to come from assets, right? And I feel like I could help hundreds and hundreds of businesses, same as you, right? Like I could step into any business and give them the knowledge they need. But I would sure like to participate in that upside. Yeah,
me too. Absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity for that. And I get what you're saying. Like, I'm some people say, well, why build this business, where you're like the face of the business and you can't sell it for some multiple down the track or whatever. I don't give a fuck about that. I'm not in business to sell an asset down the track. I'm in this business to help people. That's it. And I'm in business to make cash flow to invest in other areas. So like you said, for me, business is just cash flow. I build businesses to get cash flow to invest in other things. So I can build that set of investments that will actually generate passive income at some point in my life that I can live off and not have to worry about how much my businesses make. And then I can really just do them for fun, right? Which is where I think business is at its best, when you're doing it for fun, right? That's when it's great for your life. But like, am I obsessed with, can I sell this business for $1 million in 3 or 4 years? Not really. I don't think so for me. And for me, for this particular one, I'll do it for as long as I enjoy doing it. I'll make money out of it. If I have to shut it down one day or transition it into something else, then I'll do that.
Look, I think it's a shift in mindset, right? Like when I first started, certainly and for a few years, it was about money. It was about like, how can I build a business that I'm going to sell to get to this point? It was almost like I was putting off happiness, that once I sold a business for X amount of dollars, I was going to be happy, right? And so I just exited one for a fair amount of money. And like, it's more like, you got to be happy now. I don't know. This is something I'm definitely working on. You might have heard it in the podcast before this, where I was talking to Elliot. This is exactly what we're working on. I want to be happy now, and I love helping people as well. But I want to be happy doing it, and I want to have fun. Like I don't want to do anything that's not fun anymore. I could come into a lot of people's businesses and make a big difference, but if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. Like I don't know, man. I just want to smile every morning and smile every night.
Well, that's it. So when I went back what we talked about a little bit earlier, where I sat down and I had to think about what I need to focus on, what I should focus on. Like, did that a bit over 12 months ago. Like, part of that thinking as well was the sort of realization that, like, the payday, the end is not sort of the goal. Right? That's not the happiness, right? It's the process that needs to be the happiness. Yeah. So part of my thinking was, what am I passionate about? Like, what process am I going to be passionate about, that no matter when it ends or if it never ends, I'm always going to be happy doing that thing. I'm always going to be passionate about it. Like you say, I'm going to jump out of bed in the morning. I'm going to be like, yes, I get to do this again today. I get to keep building this business again today. And I don't care if I sell it. I don't care if it's making $1 million a year or whatever. I'm just loving it. That's what you want, right? That's what I think you need to chase, because if you get that, then it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, sure, you got to feed yourself, et cetera, but it doesn't matter if you hit that big dollar figure down the end. You know what I mean? You don't have to look far to see any sort of really successful business person tell you that the ultimate happiness doesn't come from the big payday. And they had to learn that the hard way and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's, umpteen stories of that on, anywhere you look, right? From really smart people. So I don't need to work out my life that way and get that. I know that that's not going to be where it's at. And I think as well, if you, it just affects your day to day. If you put off your happiness to when you achieve some sort of goal, like, you're kind of denying yourself happiness day to day. And why would you do that? Like, I was like that with, like, personal health and stuff as well. For a while, I was like, man, I just have to work as hard as I can. And when I make lots of money, then I'll worry about my health. I was like, yeah, but I came to the realization that that's stupid. Like, I'm at less chance of making lots and lots of money if I don't look after my health. So if I actually want to make lots and lots of money, I've got to be better as, my mind's got to be better. My physical body's got to be better so that I can think clearer, so that I can do more. And that was a big shift for me as well, probably 18 months ago there. And
look, man, I'm super pumped for you. Like, everything that, we talk every Friday, right? Everything that you're building or trying to build is very similar to like, I think the path I'm going to end up going on as far as, like, how I'm going to go about helping people. So I'm super pumped to see, how does the 12 months work? Like, you're kind of a guinea pig for me before I do anything, right? How's it going to work for Jon, right? So, I think it's really cool what you're doing. I want to fire off 3 rapid fire questions that I wrote down. One of them I asked, on the last podcast. So if anybody listened to that, I'm repeating that. I don't care. All right. Whose content do you always consume? Like, everybody has their guru. Everybody has somebody they follow out there. Who's the one person, like, they put out content and you consume it?
Mike Dillard.
Mike Dillard. I like Mike. He's
guy.
Mike. I know Mike.
Yeah,
he's a good dude.
Super, like, I'll give him a plug. Super high quality content, like the best quality content. Like, his Mike Dillard mentoring, which is his thing at the moment that he's got going. Like, the quality of the people he has on that, and the quality of the production of everything. Like, it's. I've spent tens of thousands of online education over the years, right? Like, his stuff is, and from most of the big names, right? His stuff is way ahead. Like, and it fits for what I'm doing as well, particularly, but a lot of his stuff will be applicable to any type of business. So I highly recommend looking at Mike Dillard.
He brings a ton of value just in his free stuff too. His podcast is really good.
Podcast.
I remember I met him last year in person, and he talked about how he has to scrap quite a few podcasts because it's not enough value for, like, his standards to even put out. So, like, go listen to his podcast. If anything, I think you'll find a lot of value there. All right, what's 1 to 2 things you learned this year? It's only 5 months into the year, so let's see. What's 1 to 2 things you learned this year?
Too many things, man. Look, what I learned this year, what I'm still learning a lot of as well. I mean, it's an ongoing learning process, right? Is really goes back to what I was talking from last year. It's really like how to, for me, sorry, I'll go back. Most of pretty much what I'm learning, like the marketing stuff, all of that, I'm always still learning stuff, and I've been learning about that for years. But really what's new for me is really I'm learning how to get the most out of myself, right? So whether that's and I spend a lot of time and money on this at the moment. This is really what I'm focused on, because I've found that the more I invest into myself, both And so I'm talking about like how I structure my thinking, how I improve my physical health, my mental health. Like since I started focusing on that, I've noticed significantly bigger jumps in what I'm doing in the business sense. Right. And so now I'm really focused on that. So, you know, one of the great things I've learnt in the past 5 months is certainly, I think I've finally, and I struggled with this for years, I've finally learnt the diet that works the best for me, like as in what I put into my body. I think I've got that really nailed at this point in time, and I can feel the difference. So that's a very new thing for me. So learning that has been fantastic.
And it's got to be the carnivore diet, right? Obviously.
No, it's actually not. It's actually not the carnivore diet.
That was
Although I've never tried that. I have always been interested to test that.
Why?
But I love to test things, man. Like that sort of stuff.
That one's just silly, man.
Well,
let's eat steaks 4 times a day.
There's some science behind it, but anyway, whatever.
Let's save that one for Friday because I want to see what you think about that. All right, man. One last question for you. What is one belief you had 10 years ago, or when you started, whatever? What is one belief you had that would look like silly today if you went back and talked to your old self who said this is like one belief you had?
That I could put off happiness. I think. That happiness would come as a result of something. Do you know what I mean? So what I was going back to what I was saying before, like I think I truly believed 10 years ago that I would be truly happy when I achieved something. Like that there was this big thing that would happen at some point in my life and I'd be like, oh yes, now I'm happy. You know? Like some dawning moment of happiness where it would all just come together and everything would just happen all at once. And it would be like, you know, perfect nirvana or whatever.
That was the beach in Thailand for me, man. I would sell a business and I'd just be on the beach, living the dream, mate.
Yeah. And so I think how that's changed obviously now is that I know that there are points of happiness within your life where you may feel more happy, but the secret is in finding happiness right now. That's it.
I appreciate you being on the show. What's a good way for people to reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
So you can find me at my website, jonwarren.me. You can check out Build, Sell, Grow, Repeat at buildsoulgrowrepeat.com. And of course, you know, find me online on Facebook or whatever. I'm just Jon Warren, Jon.
You know, I looked you up on LinkedIn to like have some hierarchy to walk through here, and there's 300 plus Jon Warrens. Which one do you want? I'm like, oh, you're harder to find than you think.
It's Jon as well, not John.
Nice. Well, hey man, thanks for being on. Appreciate it, and
pleasure as always.
Friday as usual.
Thanks so much for listening to episode number 6 with Jon Warren. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Go check out Jon Warren, jonwarren.me. That's JON Warren.me. BuildSellGrowRepeat.com is his business. He's pretty active on Facebook as well, so go find him there. Thanks a lot, Jon, for being on the show. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that one. I really kind of deep dove into my own journey and Jon's journey as well. If you want to hear more from Jon and myself, he actually recorded a video of me and him that's in his Facebook group. And so I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you want to hear my story being interviewed by Jon. But he would love it if you went and followed him. I would love it if you went and followed him. He's a good mate of mine. And so thanks for listening. Please go leave a review if you like that episode. If you have feedback, if you like more episodes like this, reach out. Let me know. Let me know what you guys want to hear, who you'd like to hear me interview or chat with, and I'll try to make it happen. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next Wednesday.